Hi, my name is Bob Grinier and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So welcome this Sunday the 4th of May 2025, where we'll have a look quickly at the proceedings of the 28th Russian Conference on Cold Nuclear Transmutation of Chemical Elements and Ball Lightning. So how is everyone? Sorry about the delay. I somehow had managed to chop the PSU for the camera here off right at the point at which it goes into the wall wart. So I managed to extract about 8 millimeters of wire and somehow jerry-rig something. Hopefully it will work for the duration of this stream, and then I can fix it properly. Such is life. So this conference here, the Russian conference, it says it's the 28th and it's semi-annual. So what we're looking at here is 30 years or more of calling the Russian conference on this field cold nuclear transmutation, of chemical elements and ball lightning. For me, that's very, very interesting. It kind of implies that, well, the Russians really knew what was going on from the beginning. The other thing I'll say is, and you'll see this in the second paper we'll look at, but also some of the other papers that we'll gloss over, that they're not afraid to quote other people's work in the field. They're not afraid to quote it, even as researchers themselves. Now, they might put their own take on it, of course, but this is something that I think the Russian community are very strong at. I think where they have a difficulty is in commercializing their research, and I can imagine it's quite frustrating in Russia to be living in a place, forget about what's happened in the last several years, but a place where one of the major, if not the major, external revenue earning means is by the sale of both hydrocarbons and ordinary nuclear fission fuel. So when you're trying to develop a solution that might replace both of those, you might think that the sort of people that might have money would probably not be willing to support those ventures. And I've had many conversations along those lines. Now, of course, cold transmutation of chemical nuclei includes radioactive isotopes. So that is something that the Russians in this field could have leveraged, and it would seem that they have in the past. If you had looked at my reposting of a transcript of David Yerth that I posted on my blog earlier in the week, he was talking about the Russians had effectively mastered variations of these technologies for remediating nuclear waste, and that they had gainfully employed them. Of course, also, there is the idea of nuclear synthesis of elements that have practical uses. Of course, one radioactive isotope, which is very useful, is nickel-63. It's a 100-year beta isotope, and that is being currently used in this well-publicized beta voltaic battery, which could power low-power devices for potentially hundreds of years. That's something that you would create normally from taking nickel-62 and firing a neutron into it. However, there are other useful technological isotopes that you can produce from a transmutation process. So that is another area that is potentially of interest that doesn't infringe upon the energy stranglehold that is there in Russia. These matters have only become more complicated in recent years because of what has happened in Eastern Europe. And so I really feel for my colleagues in Russia. And the reality is, many of them, just actually as it is in the West, are rather senior. We celebrated Alexander Parkhomov's 80th birthday recently. Samsonenko had his 80th birthday 2 or 3 years ago. Anatoly Klimov, who is, one could argue, the progenitor of the Bierko in Sussex in the UK and the N-gate plasma vortex reactor variations, he is himself 78 years of age, although he's very sprightly and keeps himself very fit. And you can see one of his papers in here. But yeah, I really feel for them. Anyhow, I'm going to see if I can back up something here. My computer has finally found the will to live in one aspect here. So sorry for the delay earlier today. Let me just do something here quickly. Give me a second, and then we will begin. How is everyone? We have Artifact in the house, Touche Turtle, Jack Trading, Contraption, Toroidal Soup. I like the name there, Gary Johnson. Gordon Doherty and Corky Goss, Overwound Games. Pamela, Mika Avila, John Lee, EBB. We have people from all over the world. Hi, Misunderstood. Sorry I didn't get to see you when I was in your island there. I don't know whether you were there. I sent some messages, but that was that. Hi, Ken Pratt. Hi, Zalepino. Hi, Matthew Reynolds. It's great to have so many of you here. Okay, so I will fix this hopefully here, and we will do okay, because if I don't do this, my streaming computer might stop, which will be even worse. Right. Okay. Right, so you can download this presentation, and what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to teach you several ways that you can translate these works from Russian yourself. Some of you may know obvious ones, but we'll just go through them anyway, because you probably have the tools or access to the tools yourself. So if you are interested in learning more about these papers, then I do recommend that you, thank you very much, Mark Dam, for that $30 donation. It's very kind of you. If you are interested in finding out more about the work that's being conducted in Russia, you can go ahead and translate these papers. Now, when the conference was held, I actually had a separate screen and a real-time translation system, which is not perfect, but gave you an idea of what was going on the lower part of the screen. So you can actually go and look at the 28th Russian conference videos, and you can go and look at the overview, and I'll give the links to those in the blog next week. So you can delve into this. You can see the presentations and you can see the papers here. Okay. Yes. I was in Rhodes over Easter. Misunderstood. I was actually staying just up the road from where you bought your ring all those years ago with my family. A fascinating time there it was. In fact, I was on a call with I guess he calls himself the most senior Knights Templar, not Knights Hospitalier, in the US. And there should be a podcast out, which I will publish the link to also in the next few days or so. And it was really interesting being on that podcast, because right at the end, I noticed that he had a sword behind him. And I said, sorry, can you get the sword at the back of the hilt? Can you bring that close to the camera? And so I said, what do you use that sword for? He says, well, this is the sword that I benight people into the order, the Templar Knights. I said, that's very interesting, because you see the thing that's at the back of your sword there on the back of the hilt is the most powerful symbol in the universe. It was a 4-petal with a 4 equal length Teutonic cross in between the petals. And of course, that is the symbol of the 4 order or 4 subtor structure, which we know is the first that is fully stable. So who am I talking about? Timothy W. Hogan. I don't know when there is a video coming out of that, but the audio stream is already on Cliff Dunning's podcast, so you can go and see that. It's a promo for the Cosmic Summit, which I hope people will be able to attend. Okay, without further ado, we will look at the proceedings of the Russian conference here. Okay, so this is from the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, and then also in collaboration with the Lomonosov Moscow State University and the People's Friendship University of Russia. And I had the pleasure of presenting in the one of the main lecture theatres there in February in 2015, reporting on our work on Francesco Celani and on replicating the work such that could be done of Andrea Rossi at that time. So it's quite a large document. I can't recall exactly how many pages, but we're going to find out. And I'm just going to zoom through until I see something of interest. You can see the participants here. I am there somewhere here, blah, blah, blah. You'll find me. And, oh, sorry. Where are we? Okay. So I'm going to teach you a couple of methods here of doing your translation. The first one is, if you like something you see on the screen and you want to understand a little bit more about it, one of the quick ways is to hold up your phone using Google Translate. And for those that don't know, you can select a language. You can even download Russian. And so if we are interested in this particular paper here that looks to be a little bit about ball lightning, and there's something here with power lines. This looks very interesting. This is, I think, a Bitchkov examples of where ball lightning had gone through glass and actually cut a round hole. Not quite a round hole. It's, as you can see, it has a bit at one side, and then essentially opposite there's another little pinched area. This is something that you can find. Sometimes it will go through the window and it'll leave an incredibly small thing right in the center. And this is the hole that they found in the center of the glass. Okay, so let's just confirm I'm not making that up. And the first thing I'm going to do, and you can play along with me at home, is no Brandon B. My desktop's much worse than that. Okay, so you get your smartphone here, like so, and you pull up so you can all do this together with what's on the screen, maybe even. You get your Google Translate. Let me see if I can get that. So Google Translate, and I change that to Russian. So you've got your various languages here. Let me see if I can show you this big. So there's your languages. For those that don't know, I've got Russian right at the top there. It's checked and I've downloaded the language pack. That makes it a bit quicker. And then what I do is over on the bottom right there, you have camera here, there. And you can just hold that up to the screen. And sometimes when I'm watching the Russian presentations, I will do this so I can have a quick look. And literally at real time gives you a look there. So I'm going to pause that and have a look at what it says there. So I'm seeing this, it's 11 here, and it says Sunday the 4th of August 2024, Ramis Akhmetov on July 31st, 2 ball lightnings flew into my house, both exploded in the air and burned almost at the low voltage, burned almost all the low voltage electronics, some by breakdown from secondary to primary circuits, and some simply by high electromagnetic interference. All the windows and doors in the house were closed. And here the question arises, how could they get in the house? A video was sent in which a white ball lightning with a diameter of 3 to 4 centimeters can be seen flying through the window. It's 2 seconds long. And then 12, we can read the next one here. So 12 there it says, S.V. Bogomolov, professor of the Faculty of Computational Mathematics and Cybernetics at Moscow State University, Moscow, August 2023. Impact of a effectively ball lightning on window glass, ball lightning. Photos of the trace on the window pane are presented. During the day, an observer saw a hole in the balcony glazing. And this is a photo here, apparently, from the observer's window. And I guess this is the glass that fell out. Let's just confirm that. So this is how you can read these documents, even if I don't do a translation for you. So it says, yes, hole in the glass on the left. And then it says, note the glass edge. And then over on the right, it says... shows the glass after exposure to high temperature plasma jet up to 6,000 degrees C. The formation of thin glass layer in the form of a fringe of molten glass is visible. Okay, so I think this is actually it says figure 7. Yeah, this is impact of a plasma jet on glass. So essentially what they're saying is that this isn't really in what you might consider a plasma that did this, that chopped out this bit of glass, because this is what plasma jet looks like. It's a very different thing. Anyway, so there's all kinds of ball lightnings in here. We're looking from, this particular ball lightnings are from multiple angles, from different authors. If I can recall it, this one here, it blew a hole in the building, and you can see here, this is the outside of the building, and then you can see the inside of the building. This is electronics and stuff. Here's a fire that probably was started one. This is a house that burnt down potentially by one. Here's the typical sort of thing. This is a chimney breast, which seems to have been severely damaged. This is figure 19. Can we see a reference for figure 19? Anyway, this is an electrical lamp, of course. So they take these things very seriously, and so that is a ball lightning study. Here's some very serious low-energy nuclear reaction experiment by, and this is actually old work by Savatimova, and she talked about this also in a more recent presentation. And this is the evolution of the plasma from a chamber that is in this shape. So very, very serious work, and they saw these weird recrystallizations going on and so on. So there's so much that I believe that we can learn from studying these various pieces of work. And here again, when we're looking at this chart, we might think, oh, let's see if this is useful. So we can put up our phone here, and it says light elements in single crystal polycrystalline foil after the focus in deuterium. Okay, so essentially what it's saying is they started off with single crystal pure tungsten, okay, W, okay? And then after the exposure with deuterium, these kind of weird crystal structures formed, and in some of them they had these kind of like regularly spaced structures forming. And when they analyzed various aspects of these things, and there seemed to be these kind of things coming out. But anyway, when they analyzed these at different depths, you can see different elements forming at different depths. And in this case, you've got lithium and carbon and oxygen with fairly, and that's the mass Z number. So these are different sample points. Okay, so you can delve into that in your own time. So we're going to find another way to do our translation here. So this is actually Klimov's work here, I believe. So you can see Anatoly Klimov there in Russian. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, does it have it in English as well? No, it doesn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the abstract here and we're going to translate this using a different method. So we're going to take this here, and I'm going to do a screen grab, okay? And this is on a Mac, and when it does the screen grab, I just lost it for some reason. Let's try that again. This is how my desktop gets messed up. It throws a load of screen grabs on there. So it's okay. So here's the screen grab I've just made. Now on the Mac, when you do a screen grab, just using the standard previewer that comes with it, firstly, you can actually copy the Russian here, okay? And it'll grab that Russian, and you'll be able to put that into Google Translate, and you are able to translate it, okay? The other way is you can actually click on this button down the bottom right, and it'll actually select the whole lot, okay? And then down the bottom left of the preview window, you can translate that. And is it going to translate it for me? Yes, it's translated it here. So it's just translating. You can switch between the translation and the original here. It's not perfect, but it does the job. So what is he saying here on the introduction here? The history, and you can actually copy this, by the way. You can copy the translation. Oh dear, it's now lost it. Okay, so we go to the translation. The history of the development of the plasmoid vortex reactors, PVR, began quite a long time ago in Oivri-Ran, at least 40 years ago. Let us remind you that in research on plasma aerodynamics showed that features of the dynamic structure of the shock wave, SW, in a weakly ionized non-equilibrium plasma discovered in the experiment can be explained within the framework of the physical model of possible detonation processes and the release of significant additional energy behind the shockwave front in such an environment. So for those that don't know, it was Anatoly Klimov who was one of the leaders in this technology of firing a laser out in front of a missile or a supersonic aircraft, such that you produced a shockwave in front and it made the friction for the aircraft much slower. Much less rather. And what he's saying here is that when you did that, he's suggesting that there was a detonation process in this point in front of the vehicle that then allowed for significant additional energy behind the shockwave, right? So I've never read this before. This is the first time I'm reading it here. But given the subsequent history of Anatoly Klimov's work, what he's essentially suggesting at this point, potentially, is that 40 years ago, they knew that potentially there was some nuclear reactions occurring at the point in the laser in front of the hypersonic or over the speed of sound vehicle that allowed for a different state of the environment in front of that vehicle, such that the vehicle had much lower friction moving forward. And if you go back into the history of this, you can see these key papers with Anatoly Klimov's name on them. Okay, so in the language of modern physics, low-energy nuclear reactions, in order to clarify the physical features of the whatever it was in the non-equilibrium plasma, it would be necessary to enter the energy efficiency parameter of the what? This is just a bad translation. The ratio of the energy allocated per whatever to the electrical energy spent on the creation of the pulse discharge. So in this argument, he's saying, like, was there an additional energy? And if so, then how much energy did you put into creating the laser to create this plasma, and how much additional energy came out of the shock wave produced? It was shown that in these experiments, the maximum value reached the order of 4. Right. This is actually groundbreaking for me. Like literally right now. This is totally groundbreaking. I did not know that potentially as much as 40 years ago, Anatoly Klimov had realized that when they are creating these effectively like on a Concorde, you have this nose cone that came out a long way, and that allowed for turbulence such that the Concorde could fly through the air in ultrasonic sense, in turn rather faster than the speed of sound. I didn't know that they knew that there was a COP of 4 from the technology that they're using to make extremely high velocity missiles and aircraft in Russia. This is what I'm reading here to you now is a revelation, and you're seeing it with me. Therefore, the physical mechanism of such a significant energy release behind the front of the shock wave in the non-equilibrium plasma had to be sought in the change in the internal energy of the gas excited by the electric discharge and passed through the shock front of this shock wave. Therefore, plasma technologies were the basis for the design of the PVR reactor. Okay, so he's basically saying that the genesis of the plasma vortex reactors, which are in the Biaco technology and are in the N-gate technology, was born out of trying to make missiles and aircraft fly faster. Pretty cool, right? It's like one of these, Cold War stroke space race extra benefits. You know, you try and develop something for one purpose, but then you find out it does a little bit of extra magic, and then maybe that could lead to other beneficial technologies. Further, our studies in these plasma aerodynamics, the problem of interaction of the non-equilibrium plasma with the vortex gas flow was studied in detail. Important results were obtained for the generation of stable, prolonged, heterogeneous plasmoid in a vortex flow when the electrode discharged plasma spontaneously. Well, not sure that's a great translation. Concentrated in the axial region of the vortice and heated significantly, this vortex plasmoid was also a trap for nanocluster metal particles, the result of electrode erosion. It should be noted that the first mentioned property of the vortex plasmoid allowed to solve the problem of thermal insulation of hot plasma from the reactor walls. So essentially what he does is he created this high-speed vortex of air. So you have one vortex going down the tube, and then you have another vortex going around the tube, okay? And what that does is it causes the plasma channel to be in the center. And this is what you see on the N-gate reactors, because the N-gate reactors are a progeny of Anatoly Klimov's work. Okay? It should be noted that the first mentioned property of the vortex plasmoid allowed to solve the problem of thermal insulation. Thermal. Not necessarily neutral charge clusters, because Anatoly Klimov has also shared work where it doesn't matter how fast your ultrasonic flow or your Mach 2 flow of air is, that you can produce these neutral structures that just go straight through it as if it wasn't there, and it hits the fused quartz of the tube and chews a hole through it. And so I have shared presentations where he has shown that. And that is a perennial problem when you are creating these plasmoids that then can become neutral, exotic vacuum objects that can become neutral. But the thermal insulation of the hot plasma is protected from the reactor walls. And the second property allowed to increase the efficiency of interaction of atoms and hydrogen ions with... we've got to translate a little bit more, haven't we? Got to translate a little bit more with, you see, with, right? And okay, so we'll do this just for shits and giggles. Okay, in fact, we'll do a little bit more. We'll get what we can on the page here, right? So all I'm doing is I'm using Command Shift 4, and that allows me to screen grab on a Mac an area of the screen. So I'm going to do that, select that, okay, and then I click on the preview window that comes up. I'm going to drag it up so we can all see it, okay, and then what I do is click down the bottom right-hand corner and I click on the left-hand corner and it translates. Nanoclusters of metal on its axis. It was these properties of vortex plasmoids that made it possible to use them in the creation of highly efficient plasma vortex reactor designs. Main experimental results. A number of heterogeneous plasmoid vortex reactors, PVRG with working gas flow and PVRV with water working flow. So water is one of the systems at BACO, okay? Engate are focusing on the gas flow, which contains water because it's the moisture in the air, which you can add to as well, which is essentially what's going on in the thunderstorm generator. You see how all these things fit together? Right. Were created in a scientific and technical center, Prometheus. Figure, I like this, Prometheus, you see? You see? Prometheus. So he calls it Prometheus. I gave the name Thor to the thunderstorm generator, and we have our project called Zeus. We're not Prometheus stealing fire from Zeus, or rather giving it to humanity. We're going to take ball lightning out of Zeus's hand and give it to humanity. Okay, typical values are of the non-equilibrium plasma coefficient of energy conservation in the plasma vortex reactor are 2 to 6. So a COP of 2, not so interesting. Heat pumps go further than that. 6, however, 6 is beyond a typical heat pump, which is like 3, maybe 4 on a good day. 6 is, we're talking really good high COP. The ratio of the output excess thermal energy of heterogeneous plasma flow to the electrical energy spent on its creation. Simultaneously, calibration experiments with 2 types of plasma vortex reactor were carried out using an electric heater. It is modeled that the value of heat losses in the plasma vortex reactor is between 0.6 and 0.8. That is to say, if you've got a COP of 6 and you've got heat losses around here, it's actually quite a bit higher, especially if you're trying to generate heat, okay, because you can use the heat that's being lost, okay. The value of Ki was determined as the ratio of thermal power of the flow of working gas water in the reactor to the electrical power spent on heating the electric heater. It was shown that the main thermal trips in the reactor were associated with heating of the elements of the plasma vortex reactor structure with the hot heterogeneous plasma. So basically the reactor is being heated up by the plasma, and therefore there are some thermal losses that can't be captured by wherever the plasma is going to do work. It should be noted that the results of the non-equilibrium plasma in the plasma vortex reactor gas and plasma vortex reactor water reactors are reliable. Various independent diagnostic methods were used to measure the output thermal power from the plasma vortex reactor, including contact and non-contact calorimetric methods. The method of gas-water calorimetry using thermocouples and simultaneous measurement of flow rate of working gas, water, and this is what you will see in Biaco's work, use of which is being carried out, I think, in Sussex at Sussex University. I might be wrong in that, but people can check. Use of the output water heat exchanger in the gas plasma reactor. measurement of temperature fields in the flow of heterogeneous plasma at the outlet, and so on. So you can go and read this in your own time, and I'm going to show you a different translation method here in a little while. Okay, so here is a reactor, and you can see you're injecting H2O here, and air is coming down here, and you have a vortex coming out here, and your discharge is in here, and this is what it looks like in the large water tank. These are very, very serious experiments. Very, very serious experiments. Okay. And this computer's frozen. Okay, so different parameters in whatever reactor maybe he's trying here. We have a COP of, depending on the parameter space here, 0.8, 0.73. Given the losses, that is still probably over unity. But down here we've got 1.65, 2.72, 2.82, 2.13 and 1.62. So not too shabby. These are the typical results. That is 200% over unity that he gets when he doesn't add a secondary material. And I've discussed, having forced him to admit them, I worked it out. Then he said that gives them their extra COP. And then I finally got him to admit it a number of years later. And it's the use of a neutron absorber, something like lithium, cobalt, indium, or gadolinium, something like that. Increases the COP. Cobalt, maybe I've got that wrong, but anyway, it's certainly lithium. But he, in his modern paper, he said that they realized as much as nearly about 25 years ago that you don't need metal nanoparticles, and I shared this presentation recently. You just need, drum roll, carbon. Yep, you just need carbon. And the beauty of carbon is it's cheap. And the way you can inject carbon into an environment that already has water, hydrogen, oxygen, and you want hydrogen, is put in methane or propane. Put in propane. And in the presentation he shared recently, he showed a video frame from 2001, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. So we're talking about a quarter of a century ago, where by adding propane, methane's just got one carbon, propane's got two carbons joined together. They created a C2 ion laser. They created a CC laser in a plasma vortex reactor. With no mirrors, no pumping, they created a laser out of one of these devices. What does that mean? That means coherent light. They created coherent light using carbon. Carbon, of course, is a neutron moderator. It is the basis that was in the Chicago pile, the first reactor in Chicago, nuclear reactor. And it is the basis of the RBMK reactor, which was largely used in Russia because it was very good at breeding plutonium from the weapons program. It was also the type of reactor that Chernobyl was. So carbon is a very good element in this process. And here's the thing. In a Mars gas, you get coherent matter properties from a Mars gas. Whatever's going on in that, and we've discussed that at length, but put that to one side, it can cut straight through titanium, and the thermal imaging camera does not report the temperature that titanium would melt. It can so-called vaporize, but we now know it's transmuting because we established that both by seeing it on the tungsten and also capturing the transmuted and chunks of tungsten in a filter in the work of Dr. Roish and Amaza and the experiments we did there. that also was not even at the temperature at which you would expect tungsten to even oxidize. Now, if you added just 10% of propane, just 10% of propane to a Marsa gas, so 90% of Marsa gas, 10% of propane, you know what happened? The thermal temperature of the titanium 3mm sheet went way, way higher. It would not melt it, and it would not punch a hole through it. The temperature on tungsten goes way, way higher, but it does not cause transmutation. Now, why am I saying this? Because effectively, in my view, when you add water into a system such as the thunderstorm generator, and it flashes, it creates the components that are in it. When you flash that to steam, and you rip those particles apart, it creates the components similar to a Marsa gas. And when those come out of the engine, they're ignited and they're all in this hot plasma, and they come through this vortex with that multi-axis hydrodynamic shear. What do you get? Well, you have carbon in the mix. You have carbon in the mix in the form of, drumroll, nanoparticles. In the form of nanoparticles. Exactly what Klimov has said in a recent presentation that we have published that they were doing 1/4 of a century ago. Multi-axis hydrodynamic shear with water, with plasma, everything you are seeing in a Thor, everything you are seeing in a thunderstorm generator. And what are you getting? You're getting transmuted elements. And for those transmuted elements to be there, you are going to get excess heat, assuming it's all going in the right direction. Okay, so if we follow down here a little bit more in Klimov's work, you can see that they are getting spectral lines. Let me just check that this is spectral lines. Let me just check this is spectral lines. I'm gonna use my googly translate on my phone here, just for this particular case here. And we are going to hold it up, and what does it say that this chart is telling us? It says marked hydrogen lines. The blue lines here are hydrogen lines. And here it says the marked lines are argon. So these are argon lines here, right? And then probably if we go down further, oh, so he's probably seeing some transmutation, but I kind of missed it. I know he talks about transmutation. So, oh, what has he got there? He says, so, all right, I'm gonna go here, and we're gonna translate this using the method that I've showed you before. So I've done Command Shift 4. We're going to select this piece here. I'm going to click down here, and we're going to pull this up, and we're going to click on that, and we're going to click on that. And what is it going to give us? The analysis of EDS spectra leads to important conclusions. Figure B. Where's Figure B? Figure B? Figure B? I don't know. Maybe that's not Figure B. Maybe it's translated that. Where is Figure? It really does say Figure B. Anyway, there is an appearance of both heavy chemical elements and light elements compared to the atomic weight of the electrodes themselves. In EDS spectra, both expected elements such as zinc and iron, products of possible transmutation of copper electrode. Iron? What are we seeing in the thunderstorm generator? We're seeing iron. Silicon and magnesium, products of possible transmutation of aluminium electrode. And we've seen this often because magnesium is left of aluminium and silicon is right of aluminium. So you actually gain energy by doing a transmutation by fusing and fissioning aluminium. You don't believe me? I can see there's a doubter. There's a doubting Thomas out there that doesn't believe this is possible. And for those that haven't seen me do this about 50 times before, let's do this for you. And we'll use the Parkhomov-Lena reaction calculator here. And at nanosoft.co.nz. So let me just get that up. That was programmed by my friend and colleague in New Zealand, Philip Power here. So this is the reaction calculator. So we can go 2 to 2 reactions here, and we can type in, I'm going to make this bigger for you guys so you can see what I'm doing here. And we are going to type in aluminium here, aluminium, and we're going to type in aluminium. And that's all we're going to do, just aluminium and aluminium. Aluminum for you guys over there in the States, and for those that like aluminum. Right, okay, and that's basically all we're doing. And down the bottom, we're going to hit execute query. And what do we get out of that? We get aluminium and aluminium can do this, but down here, we can see we have a reactions down here that are producing silicon 30 and magnesium 24, silicon 28 and magnesium 26, and down the bottom there, silicon 29 and magnesium 25. More likely that it's going to produce the 24 and 30 and the 26 and 28. And these are 4 million electron volts roughly. So this is approximately equal to 1 million times the energy you get from the most energetic chemical reaction, that is the recombination of 2 atomic hydrogens into H2 gas, which is about 4.5 or whatever it is. Electron volts. This is nearly 4 million electron volts, not 4 electron volts, 4 million electron volts, okay? So that's a lot of energy you're getting from, oh, it's aluminium, our friend aluminium, which I believe is probably one of the most important nuclear fuels, and it's just so nice, isn't it? Because guess what? It's the 3rd most abundant element in the crust. Okay, all right, happy days, happy days. Silicon and magnesium are properties of the possible transmutation of the aluminium electrode are observed. Now, this is what's going on in the other N-gate reactor, which I had a hand in its creation by one George Eagley. And he does, if you go and look at his ICCF 26 presentation for his poster, it produces these elements, okay? And ultimately, that's what gums up the electrode, okay? Are observed. And completely unexpected elements such as carbon in large quantities. Carbon in large quantities. Isn't that interesting? Because you know what? That is exactly what Matsumoto found. That's exactly what we have found. It also produces hydrogen. It also produces hydrogen. Carbon in large quantities, and many others. Further experiments require a thorough analysis of the isotopic composition of these elements. The possible difference between this composition and the natural one can finally confirm the hypothesis of the artificial origin of these elements. This is frigging cool. This is frigging cool. Because if you're creating silicon, 2 silicons, or 2 aluminiums, you're getting on to being iron. Of course, double magnesium is chromium. Magnesium is, in fact, actually double carbon. So is the magnesium coming from a fusion fissioning of 2 aluminium atoms, or is it coming from the extra carbon that's being synthesized fusing? Yeah, whatever. But these are the elements that are being formed. And the interesting thing is that they expect the synthesis of zinc and iron, and they expect that that is coming from copper. Maybe we can do that reaction. Is it a fusion fission, or is it a, I don't know, like, it's difficult to know. They're saying it's from the copper, so we can put Cu in here. But is it because we've got hydrogen in there and oxygen? We'll put hydrogen and oxygen here, and we will put Cu here, and we will do probably and E4 in open bracket Fe, comma, Z Zn. Okay, let's see if we have any reactions that produce iron and zinc. Oh, well, looky here. Oxygen 17, the favorite reaction product that I believe is key in LENR, because it is the fusion of an electron and it's effectively atomic hydrogen, an electron and a proton in atomic hydrogen with an antineutrino fusing with oxygen 16 to make oxygen 17. And I've explained in detail, and it's part of the published paper in Nature Scientific Reports with Binger and Huang. That combines with the heavier isotope 65 of copper to form magnesium 26. Oh wow, we've actually got some magnesium forming here. Not from the aluminium, but actually from this reaction here, and iron 56. So the most abundant isotope of iron with 8.7 million electron volts. 8.7 million electron volts, okay? Oxygen 18, too rare. Oxygen 17, again, oxygen 17. Would you believe it? That's the second most energetic reaction that's from a likely product that occurs in LENR, because oxygen 18 is too far down. If you're already making oxygen 17, it's already going to react with 65 or 63. So that produces, oh, look at that, magnesium 24 and iron 56. The most abundant isotope of iron and one of the most abundant isotopes of magnesium. And again, 8.15 million electron volts. Million electron volts. So the copper in this case is a fuel, and it combines with hydrogen, oxygen, electron and an antineutrino in a reaction. Boom. There we go. So he's saying that the copper might be the source of just the iron, but when we look at this, the iron and the magnesium could be coming from a reaction of oxygen 17, which I have argued is absolutely critical in LENR reaction processes, and it's synthesized on the fly in the magnetohydrodynamic structure, and that yields the outcome. See, we're just one paper, and we're looking at this real time using the tools that you can freely access. Using the tools that you can freely access, that we have made available as a project with your support over the years. Okay, so back to the paper here. Now he's looking, so this is B1, this is the sample. Oh, look at this. So they're looking at I think this is actually, no, this is the quantization. Yeah, so look at the iron they're finding here. Iron, 52% is iron. 52% of the sample area is iron. And what else do we have? Oh, oxygen. So by atomic mass, iron and oxygen is in the ratio of 1 to 2, FeO2. Now where have we seen that before? Could it be like every single LENR experiment if you really look at it? That looks like our iron-rich crenellated spheres. And all of the rest of the gubbins that you see here are the typically synthesized elements. Carbon, oxygen, magnesium, aluminium we've already got in the mix, silicon, sulfur, of course, chlorine, potassium, calcium, no, titanium, which is CO2 fused. Of course, silicon is just CO fused. Manganese, iron, copper is already in the process. And if you punch a proton into copper, you get zinc. But looky here. By atom weight, two oxygens to one iron. What was he actually looking at? What was he looking at? He was at selected area 1? Selected, it looks like the lighter one. I think he was looking, I think that there, dear Anatoly, might have actually been an iron-rich crenellated sphere, but it's just not high enough resolution. It is selected area 1. Boom! Well done, Mr. Klimov. Well done, Mr. Klimov. Look at that. It's kind of spheroid, and you know, when you look at it, it's definitely looking like the FeO2 ratio. Because it's in a plasma and it's mixed up, this is a bit like we saw in our supernova reactors, nova reactors. Because all the stuff is going around, after the sphere is made, it's going to be heated a bit, it's going to be slapped with all kinds of different transmutated products, and it's not quite as beautiful as the things. What we are seeing in this work here is what we see in all of those reaction zones in the Thor reactor, which is what we see being created in the center of the vortices in the Ultra experiment, which is what we see in the cavitation system of Benjamin Huang. Do you get it yet? Is it making sense? I'm looking at this with you for the first time and just looking at one of the papers in the conference. Just one of the papers, real time with you. Doing the translation and showing you the chemical nuclear LENR reactions. And showing you also where the energy is coming from. Okay? I'm showing you, I'm teaching you to fish here. I'm teaching you so that you can go and look at papers as they come out. Make up your own mind what's going on. Make up your own mind what is going on. So has he got a conclusion here? Should we translate the conclusion? What have we got here? This might be the conclusion. Let's see if it is the conclusion and whether I'm making it up. So we will do our method. I've done Command Shift 4. Select that, click on the thing that pops up, come up here, and oh, it's not giving me my translation here. That's annoying. Sometimes when you have a different line here, it might mess it up. So we'll try that again. I'll just try the bulk of the text here. Just a tip there. Now you can see my desktop is filling up with lots and lots of rubbish right now. Okay, yeah, because I got this headline up here, sometimes it doesn't do it correctly. Okay, so what have we got here? What is Mr. Klamath saying? And his colleagues, the latest experimental results obtained from the plasma vortex reactor, water plasma reactor are considered reliable. So if it's a water plasma reactor, it will be creating HHO. So this is creating the type of thing that you would see in what? A Benjamin Huang cavitation reactor, an Ultra reactor, a Thor, thunderstorm generator, a Marsa gas. All of these different systems are using special, excited, critically impacted water interactions. Reliable results on the measurement of energy efficiency using the closed-type water calorimeter were obtained. The typical value of the energy balance reached was 224, up to a COP of 4, without taking into account the heat losses in the reactor. So the 2 is the worst case scenario, not taking into consideration the heat losses. Given the heat loss that they worked out using a normal electric heater, you're probably talking around about 3 to 6 here. Okay? Optical spectra in the water heterogeneous plasma created in the plasma vortex reactor water were obtained and analyzed. The Balmer series of hydrogen shines the brightest. Argon lines and argon 2 are clearly visible in the spectra. Most of the optical lines have not been identified so far, so there's new optical lines in there. It is assumed that highly excited argon complexes appear in the heterogeneous plasma during the realization of LENR in it. Measurements of the chemical composition of the powder from transmuted elements obtained in the plasma vortex reactor were carried out by EDS spectroscopy, and both expected elements such as zinc and iron, products of possible transmutation of the copper electrode. I would argue that actually the iron could well be transmutation of aluminium as well. Silicon and magnesium, products of the aluminium electrode, are observed, and completely unexpected elements such as carbon in large quantities, and many others. So, what did David Hudson claim in 1986 in a newspaper when he was remediating nuclear waste? He got, wait for it, aluminium, he got iron, and he put the radioactive waste with the chips of iron and the shavings of aluminium. He then applied Brown's gas to that, and it started to glow, and it started to glow, and it produced a little ball, and then it went boom. And what did he say in 1986? He says, the radioactive material predominantly becomes carbon. 1986. Read it and weep. Read it and weep. What does Matsumoto say in his introduction to his book, having studied for 11 years the process of electronuclear collapse and electronuclear regeneration? He says it predominantly produces normal chemical elements like carbon, oxygen, iron. What did S.V. Adamenko say? Basically the same thing. Are we getting it yet? And if this is going on in the Earth, one thing that I had suspected, one thing that came out of Francesco Piantelli's work, was these ejection of hydrogen. It's the balancing element. In S.V. Adamenko's work, he says it forms an electronucleus macrocluster, and at certain points within that structure, a stable nuclei is made and it is ejected from the cluster. What is the simplest stable nuclei that can be formed? It is a proton. What is a proton? It's the nucleus of protium. That is one mass unit hydrogen. Now, if this system produces predominantly carbon from whatever element you give it, carbon, remember what was coming out of that lead ball from Matsumoto? It was like a splat of carbon, largely. We replicated that on indium. He was using lead, we were using indium. Carbon coming out, right? Predominantly. If you have a system that is producing a lot of carbon and a lot of hydrogen under pressures deep in the bowels of the Earth, what are you going to get? What are you going to get? What are you going to get, guys? Lots of hydrogen and carbon at temperature in the bowels of the Earth. What are you going to get? What are you going to get? Yes, Ben Polgardi, oil and gas. Oil and gas. When the Rockefellers came up with the concept of fossil fuel to make us all feel bad about it and that it was rare and gonna deplete, in Vienna a long time ago, it was a marketing tool. We now have mainstream, not Lena researchers, finally starting to discuss that the heat of the Earth and the elements within the crust are possibly the result of low-energy nuclear reactions. If that is true, and we are to accept that, and I believe it is the case and have argued it vociferously since, well, 2017, but first time I was fully on the record at a conference was in my poster session at ICCF 22 in 2019. If we are to accept that that is the case, knowing that this process produces hydrogen and carbon as predominant outputs for very logical, simple reasons, and from empirical, observed, repeatable data across multiple data sets from multiple authors over nearly half a century, if we are to accept that, then a biogenic genesis of oil and gas is a thing, and the Russians have been right about it all along. Now, I'm not saying it's really quick in the Earth. it might take a very long time to produce the reserves that are there. But can we stop calling it fossil fuel? I agree that if you get coal, and when you break those pieces of coal apart, you see a piece of wood in there, or you see a fern or whatever, coal, yeah, coal is probably fossil fuel. But it's been known for a long time that a lot of oil and gas, particularly gas, is at a depth where basically nothing could have got down there to die. No little creatures died. We're not using fossil fuel. We are using, my friends, the product of low energy nuclear reactions. The heat in the earth, the elements in the earth, and very, 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 very likely the way actual stars work is the same as ball lightning. It is all low energy nuclear reactions. We are being sold a crock of shit all across the world. Money is being pulled out of your pocket to feed into the hot fusion nonsense. Scientists are literally wasting their intellect, decade upon decade, in their pursuit for a falsehood. I'm riffing on this. I'm a little bit mad because I'm seeing this for the first time. This paper with you. This paper, which we've done a bit of translation, we've done a little bit of work on it. I've shown you what you can do as individuals using tools that are freely available to you. The tools that we as a project have made available to you, and the tools that are freely available to you. You can see for yourself the physical reality that comes out of these experiments. At some point, the dam has got to break. It's got to break. They won't let us fix the radiation problem. They are adamant that you are not allowed to use this technology to fix the radiation problem. Why? You have to admit it's real. If you had a massive program of actually cleaning up nuclear waste in a public sense for pennies on the dollar compared to what they're actually planning to do, like store it forever at whatever it is, 16 billion a year, or you know, the nearly best part of $1 trillion that's planned to fix Fukushima or manage Fukushima until 2050, and then something after that for the next 50, 100,000 years, I don't know what. The sarcophagus that they have to replace every 100 years at at Chernobyl, right? Biggest structure, right? Like ever. It's a boondoggle. It's like money in the back pocket of a lot of people. It's sickening. It's just sickening. Humanity has this right within its grasp. Right within its grasp. We're going to take back ball lightning because we've used it in the past. We're going to take it back. We're going to take it from Zeus or whoever thinks they should hold on to it. Now, on this kind of subject, I will refer you to this next presentation, of which I am a author. There we go, green you. And what is this? This is what is it? It's formation of solid phase when irradiating carbon dioxide with a laser beam passing near the spark electric discharge zone in a water-air environment. So, a spark electric discharge, a disruptive discharge in a water-air environment. What have we got in the thunderstorm generator? Let's just refresh ourselves. Before I ever saw something working, I said, the ionizer, which is not an ionizer, but it's being called an ionizer, but it's definitely not an ionizer. If you want it to be an ionizer, you would use an ionizing bulb. But an ionizing bulb is not being used, so it's not an ionizer. So there's a lamp in there for helping turtles and tortoises and lizards, right? It's not an ionizing bulb. Then there's a bubbler. It's a bubbler. what we can say about the bubbler is definitely adding water into the thunderstorm generator. Now, the thunderstorm generator has hot gases coming out and it has cold water coming in. And you know what you get with that? You get exactly what you get in what I said, the Armstrong electrostatic boiler. The Armstrong electrostatic boiler. What is going on in the Armstrong electrostatic boiler? Well, water is flashing to steam. And what is it producing? Because of a bit of turbulence, multi-axis shear, it's producing vast numbers of electrons. Now, you can argue how that's occurring. Is it friction? Is it critical impact on the material, like Shishkin would say? I believe it's the latter, but let's say whatever. It's producing highly charged oxygen and hydrogen, splitting it up maybe. Okay? And that is equivalent to what is going on here. Spark electric discharge in water. So the Armstrong electrostatic boiler could produce 1.98 million volts, 2 feet of spark in air. So we know this works. Okay, so let's have a look at the diagram. I know this experiment reasonably well. So what they have is one electrode and another electrode. And then they have a pulsed discharge unit of 30 kilovolts. One electrode, another electrode with sparks. And you know what they have in here? A water-air environment. In fact, it looks like this glass chamber actually has air above and a pool of water below. Air above and a pool of water below. I've not seen a photo of it, but there we go. This is our spark, 2 electrodes, and they're basically doing the discharges in the water-rich environment above. Okay. Now, what do they have here? This is, in your best Russian, laser. Laser. Yeah. Everyone read it, laser. Okay. And that laser is firing a laser through a non-plastic, that is to say, probably silicon dioxide, fiber optic cable, which is got a membrane on it, and then it's got glass, and the outside of the chamber is glass. Okay, so we have a spark with some water-filled air, and then a glass barrier, then air, and then we have a insulator, and then glass. So we have several different things for this to fire through. Then what happens, they wind this round over here and it fires, you can see the green laser over on here. Now the interesting bit of this experiment is, oh look, they've actually got part of the apparatus here. I haven't seen this before. You see, this is lovely going through this with you, so we can all see it together. I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at here, but I can see a laser coming in here. So this might be the chamber in which the laser came into, okay? And what they show in this diagram is, we just saw one with the laser showing on this wall over here. They had the laser coming in, and underneath the beam of the laser, periodically, there were these white lumps of something that started collecting. Now, what did they have inside this sealed impermeable chamber? They had it completely flushed with what? CO2. CO2. Carbon dioxide. This terrible stuff that all of life works on planet Earth. Yeah, all the plants, they need the CO2. It's plant food. And all of the animals and all the people that don't like to eat animals, they need the plant. The plants need the plant food, which is CO2, which is not 4%, as someone told me the other day, a university professor, when I asked them. It's 0.004%, or 0.04%. It's 4 parts per million or something. It's just not a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, okay, guys? It's just not a lot. And you can breathe it up to 6% before it's a real problem, okay? Not much. Anyway, this whole chamber is full of CO2. And you know what happens? It produced these regularly spaced splodges of something. Well, I was sent this something, which you can see here, okay? And it's sitting on silicon dioxide on this microscope slide. And I was sent some of this, and so here you go. This is a diagram here. So there's the first part, and you've got CO2 in here, and okay, so they got some CO2 here, whatever. So they were pumping CO2 in here, and the excess CO2 was going through a water system. So this is actually how they generated it. Okay, so they were putting CO2 in there. So this is the actual material that was recovered, this white flaky stuff here. White flaky stuff here. And when you look at it under the microscope, these are the sample points that I myself took here in Prague. And you can see carbon and oxygen, okay? But here, aluminium, 23.74%, 30.42%, 14%, 6.2%, 12.8%, and I think these are the time or whatever. Anyway, so a lot of aluminium is being formed. And so I think Kovacs, Andras did a study on the various points here. Now they speculate that there is like a magnecule, like a centilli magnecule. So one of my co-authors on this paper is Valery Zatelepin, and he believes there's this particular molecule, you can see it later, which is based on the Baru model, where hydrogen H2 is rearranged so that the two electrons form a Cooper pair in the middle, and the Cooper pair in the middle, and the protons go on the outside. And this is a magnetic particle that can cluster together, and it also has the ability to create magnetically bound clusters that simulate other elements. I'm not sure that that's the case, but they are thinking that. So I have a disagreement with my co-authors here, but you know they're the leads on the paper. So they are saying that it's the aluminium in quotes here is actually formed of a magnetic cluster bound together by what they call dark hydrogen, which is kind of in the line of the magnecules of centilli from these two atoms of carbon-12, an H2 and an H1, okay? And so they say that essentially the nuclei is a cluster, a magnetic cluster, which effectively requires the same kind of electron shells as ordinary aluminium. Anyway, that's their theory, and they're welcome to it. So you can actually see here in the final bit here, there's a part by Baranov, Kovacs, myself, and Zatelepin, and the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. And you can see here, you know, in this particular spot, there was 30.42% aluminium. And I would argue that the aluminium is actually coming from an exchange reaction. So shall we do the exchange reaction that I think is happening, although I could be wrong. So, you know, I've been wrong in the past, so I could be wrong now, but, you know, there we go. So, we will bring up our thing here, and we will say we are going to be putting in carbon and oxygen, and we want to see if any of that will result in the synthesis of aluminium and what the co-product will be of that. So we'll execute our query here, and do we see anything? Do we see anything? Oh, hold on. So what have we got here? Well, carbon-13 is very rare. Oxygen-18 is very rare, so we can forget that one. Carbon-12 plus oxygen-16 goes to, drum roll, hydrogen. Remember what I was saying? Lena produces hydrogen in our abiogenic synthesis of oil. And, drum roll, aluminium. So the first most likely reaction from the most abundant carbon isotope and the most abundant oxygen isotope is the only isotope of aluminium plus a proton. That's it, with no neutrinos involved. and it produces 5.17 million electron volts, much more likely than any of these. So this is unlikely because they're very rare isotopes. So the most likely product of carbon and oxygen fusing in an exchange reaction is the synthesis of aluminium. Do you see what I've just showed you? I've showed you that using spark discharge with water, something utterly amazing. What is the implications of what I've just showed you? It's that coherent light, and in fact any light, but let's say coherent light, is able to, and what is coherent light in a laser? It's a wave, but it's a traveling wave of in phase and same frequency light. And what does that have? It has nodes and antinodes, okay? Nodes and antinodes, which means it has points on which things can aggregate, okay? And those things that are aggregating on that point are moving along with the traveling wave. What am I going on about? You say, Bob, what are you going on about? What are you actually talking about here? I'm talking about this. I'm talking about what is going on here is that we are producing single frequency of light. I guess presume it's a green laser because it's got green coming out of here, right? Single frequency of light, and it is in phase. That's the point of a laser, right? But for it to be traveling around down here, it's a traveling wave, which has nodes and antinodes, and something which must be neutral. It must be neutral because it's traveling through air, then it's traveling through glass, which is at one interface change, then it's going into air again, then it's going through the insulation on the fiber, and then it's going into the fiber, then it's coming all the way down here and in here. But anyway, the light is capturing some neutral clusters. The light is capturing some neutral clusters, and they are being fed out of here, out of this, and then they are interacting with the CO2. The implications of what I'm showing to you here are utterly mind-boggling. Why? This implies we can create a system that will sequester CO2 into solid form. I don't care whether it's really aluminium or it's fake aluminium. Real aluminium or fake aluminium. It doesn't really matter, does it? From the point of view of sequestering the carbon. And what is it converting it to? It would seem the third most abundant element in the crust, as I said earlier. The third most abundant element in the Earth's crust. Isn't it likely that if ball lightning were involved, and this is the process, that other stuff that's most likely to be formed, like carbon and also, oxygen, these are very common things to be produced in liner, that with a little bit more of the process going on, it would form aluminium. Oxygen's the most abundant by far element in the crust. Most abundant by far. You know what's the second most abundant? Silicon. You know what silicon is? It's the fusion of carbon and oxygen. So the most abundant is oxygen. The second most abundant is the fusion of carbon and oxygen. The third most abundant is the fusion-fission of carbon and oxygen, producing a proton and producing aluminium. Everything's lining up. But what you have here in this system right here is a system by which, if we wanted to get rid of plant food, we could create a system that might even be based on liner. So if you wanted to create a system that required electricity to work, well, if you could create electricity over unity, that is to say, a system that produces a very large amount of extra electricity, then you have a system that can power both the electrical discharge from this 30 kilovolt system and power the electrical laser indefinitely. Indefinitely. And then just using this spark discharge, which itself might be producing energy, it probably is, and then it's passing it all the way down this line in here. Now, the question is actually, is in here, in this spark discharge, we already know from Klimoff's work that it can produce carbon and oxygen, and it's got water and air in here. So is it actually that exotic vacuum objects are formed in here and the synthesis is in here, and what's happening is it's going all the way through this tube and coming out here, and it's disrupting the laser's pure flight, and you are actually transferring transmuted material from here to here? That is my open question. But if that is not the case, we have a method to sequester into a solid form, a form which, by the way, includes a lot of aluminium, and aluminium, I've said, is a very good Lehner fuel, right? So you're literally converting so-called a pollution into a Lehner fuel. Okay. So we're already past midnight here. I know we started late, but we're only 2 papers in. And the first has shown us pretty unequivocally aspects of the thunderstorm generator and very many other experiments, like what's going on with the Engate team and the Bianco team. And Klimoff's work effectively are producing iron-rich crenellated spheres. I pretty much conclude that would be iron-rich crenellated spheres because it is our FeO2 ratio. Okay, so it's the same process. And here we are, we're seeing the synthesis of aluminium, potentially, either whether it's a fake atom or a real atom, it does not matter. This has practical uses. Practical uses. Okay, let's have a noodle on. Let's see what else we can find. Like I say, all these presentations are out there for you to enjoy with rough translations. What is this one? Oh, this is into strange radiation tracks from spark discharges here. And you can see this classic Shishkin image here. And, well, looks like a whole bunch of elements there, if that's an element chart. That's the number of strange radiation tracks per millimeter away from the device, maybe. I don't know. It looks like it is. A range of what I call M&M tracks. Very classic M&M tracks. But are they crystals when you get 3-body abrasion? So you have 2 perspex sheets and a piece of grit between. So these are things that you need to consider. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. So I think maybe that's 2 papers. We'll have a look to see if there's anything quickly. On rotation bodies here. This, I'm sure, is very interesting. Hold on. Yeah, okay. What else we got here? Some theoretical models. This is Parkmore. We're going to have a look at that later in this other paper. So we'll leave that for now. Okay, so this structure, what's this paper here? What's this paper here? Now I'm gonna show you a different method of converting something. And this is using Word. Okay. Actually, before that, I'm going to show you another method using Google Translate, but online. So bear with me. I'm just going to bring up a second window here. So if you go to Google Translate, it actually has a couple of options up here for images. If I zoom this in here, documents here, so we can drag and drop a document here, and in theory it'll translate it, so Russian to English, images, and even websites. So we'll try the document one here. So we're going to make a PDF from the paper that we have, and the way that I'm going to do that, I'm going to go in here, and this only really works. It might work with normal PDF, but if you've got full Acrobat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract this paper. If I can extract it, this one. Hold on, where does this paper end? Is it a long paper? It might be a long paper. I don't know. Hold on, that looks like the end of it, doesn't it? Okay. Is that the end of it, or is that a next paper? Might be the next paper. Are you bored yet? I don't know. We'll find another paper. I can't really determine the start and the end of that one. Okay. La-di-da-di-da. I quite like this one. It's got big holes, sinkholes in the ground. This is fracking. This looks like the fracking down in Texas. Okay, what have we got here? This is cavitation, spots, holes. Well, that's a nice image, isn't it? La-di-da. Oh, look, there's Rossi's Twizzy here. Oh, and this is this guy from Zimbabwe who keeps popping up every now and again. Okay. The mechanism of cavitation in solid, liquid, gaseous, and ether. Electric shock. Sounds interesting. Ball lightning. Oh, we like ball lightning. Lots of different images of ball lightning here. Look at this classic ball lightning track here, and it blows up and little ball lightnings come out. Very nice. That's a synthetic one, probably from silicon. Okay. Like I say, lots of fun to be had by going through these papers. We've already had a lot of fun already today, but imagine how much fun you could have by spending a lot of time translating. So this is the Barut model here. Oh, is it 2 protons in the center? I don't know. Maybe that's not the Barut model. Oh no, it must be the Barut model, because here we go. These are the deposits from the experiment we were just looking at. So this is a second experiment. Different setup here. Same thing being produced. Oh, look at these. Gennady would be proud. Look at that. It's like a solid hollow sphere here with a kind of separate different material on the outside, and then in a substrate. This one's got a layer on the outside that you can peel off. Interesting. I don't know what the play balls. Oh, hold on. Okay, so maybe this is the one that I'll translate. Right, okay, so we go here, and I'm going to select down to the end of the paper, which is somewhere down here. Is it down there? Down there? No, it's a little bit further. It's quite a long paper. Right, okay, so that's the end. Now what you can do is you can select the slides you want here in Acrobat, and you can right button click, and you can go extract pages. And this will extract it into a different document here, and it's not protected, this document, so you can do that. And so I'm going to translate, well, I'm just going to call this rings, and we'll save this document file, save as. I'm going to call it rings. Okay, and then we are going to load that in here. So if we can, hopefully it'll I'll be able to do straight from PDF. I don't even know, actually. I've not done this. Right, rings, come on. Oh God, my drag and drop's not working. So can I select something? Browse my files. I'm going to do that. Rings. Okay. Right. So I'm going to upload my PDF here. Okay, and I'm going to hit the translate button. Okay, and I'm going to open the translation. It's probably converted it into a Google Doc. There we go. So, isn't that nice? That was quick, wasn't it? Machine translated by Google. Cold Nuclear Fusion and Ball Lightning by A.V. Shestopolov, Public Laboratory, Nanomir, Moscow. And there's his email. The mechanism of origin of matter on ring-faced models of atoms and molecules is considered. Cold nuclear fusion is the self-assembly of elementary particles from the ether. Very nice. Atoms from elementary particles, molecules from atoms. So the ether makes elementary particles, atoms are made from elementary particles, and molecules from atoms. There we go, so everything is made of ether. Since fusion of light nuclei can only be thermonuclear, I called cold nuclear fusion cold nuclear fusion. Okay, fine. From ether. Microball lightning occurs during cold nuclear transmutation. There we go. They're not being very subtle about this. Converts fuel into ash and burns out the filament in metal hydrogen reactors. There we go, metal hydrogen reactors. The question of where the energy in ball lightning comes from is considered. All my scientific life, which is more than 40 years, I have been working on the problem of combating coal methane, working as a research fellow at the Institute for Problems of Integrated Development of Subsoil of the Russian Academy of Sciences. These are very serious researchers, okay? These are not fly-by-night people trying to make a quick buck or whatever. Methane, as it turned out, that initially there is no coal in the seams, but it appears as a result of the management of mining operations. The last statement is my hypothesis, but the official mining science in terms of gas dynamic phenomena, GDP, during the development of coal seams at great depths is also a hypothesis that is more than 100 years old. Sudden outbursts of coal, rock and gas, part of GDP, still occurs sometimes. Even today, even when forecast is not dangerous and blowout prevention measures are fully implemented. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. I copied that, extracted those pages, dumped them into Google's document translator, and we're getting something we can read and get a good idea about. In Russia, mining has moved from the Donbass to the Kuzbass, where the coal seams are thicker and they have the same problems as the Donbass in combating emissions, as well as explained below, which are also arise later when mining operations reach great depths. The main misconception of the officials is that they consider coal seam to be fractured porous medium containing methane in quantities actually observed during whatever. There are, however, several works whose authors admit the production of minor additional quantities of methane during the destruction of coal. The mine experiment has not yet been able to prove or disprove any of the hypothesis, and for the last 30 years has not been available to a wide range of researchers. So what he's suggesting here is when you actually fracture coal, you end up creating methane. So this is almost like a fracture fission process. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. From here, I call, in my opinion, great scientists of our time by the name of the patronymic at the first mention, and all the subsequent ones I put only initials. One of the previous I spoke about two possible paths of cold nuclear transmutation. Figuratively speaking, a house can be built from scratch or it can be rebuilt. In the first case, this is an analog of cold nuclear fusion from the ether. And in the second, an analog of cold nuclear transmutation, CNTS, is a self-assembly of elementary particles, nuclei, atoms, molecules, and sometimes supermolecules and clusters from ether, presumably due to magnetic forces. So he's actually combining both of the topics that I've just discussed. Actual transmutation of elements constructed out of subatomic particles that are made from ether, and other atoms that are actually created by the aggregation supermolecules by magnetic forces. Electrical forces appear later when elementary particles approach each other and balance the first. I may be wrong about the name of the forces because I'm a mining engineer. So this is someone who's a mining engineer, but he's seen enough in his 40 years that something more interesting is going on than what you are taught. In my opinion, this is a pushing of the proton between neighbouring nuclei, I assume exclusively under the action of flow of mechanical energy arising, for example, due to thermal stresses as a result of heating the fuel powder in a metal hydrogen reactor. Okay, so I don't know whether we need to go into all of this, but you can see it's made a reasonable model. There are rules of self-assembly in nature. Back in 1894, the German organic chemist Emil Fischer suggested that interactions occur if the shapes of molecules fit each other, just like key fits a lock. For atomic nuclei, such rules were discovered and described by Yuri Vasilievich Bertaev. For atoms by Boris Vasilievich Bolotov, he's a very good guy, Bolotov. For protein molecules, Alexander Yuryevich Kushlev, who calls them genetic code. I think that the list of names of the authors of the rules can be continued. Ring-shaped models of atoms explain, confirm, and clearly illustrate the empirical formula here. Determining the number of electrons at energy levels n, I think this alone translates the model into the rank of theory. So here's one particular person showing a ring theory of a model. Here is another particular person showing a ring theory of a model. And here is another particular person showing a ring theory of a model of atoms and molecules. Okay? As is known from Boris Vasilievich Bolotov and Vladimir Akimovich Atsalutsovsky, and I suppose many people think so, atoms of all substances consist of hydrogen atoms. In my opinion, the ring-shaped model of the hydrogen atom is an analogue of a tornado. Boom! This is the first time I've read this, guys. This is the first time I've read this. And the atoms of the substances are analogue of Nikola Tesla's plasma lamp of 1894. On the right, I can found confirmation of this idea in the film. Okay, so here we go. So he literally has an analogues of the ring-faced model of the hydrogen atom, his ideas. So Prosperity 2 and Computer Graphics by Vladimir Milkonov in the center. The author of this film, Foster Gamble, says in the second episode, the atom is a funnel in the sea of energy. And in the first episode, he demonstrates Snelson's model as turned out from my correspondence with Kenneth without his consent. Examples of self-assembly of two-dimensional blah, 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 blah. Okay, so he's got a tornado and he's got a Tesla globe. And then he's talking about these these different things here. Helium atom, alpha particle, based on this model with the tornadoes involved. And then he's got some more complicated ones here. So this is graphene from 10 carbon atoms, according to this particular author. And then this is water from 3 H2O molecules, according to this author, same author as above. Okay. When electrons or two atoms combine. So this is quite an interesting theory, and it does look a lot by something similar. I thought, where have I seen this before? Here, in the graphene are carbon atoms bonded together in hexagonal structure. Fractal in graphene. Hexagonal carbon atoms are linked together in a hexagonal structure. Pavel Osmira. There we go. That's our friend Pavel Osmira right there. Okay. And very similar ideas to these other Russian authors. Okay. Carbon atoms are linked by bonds between valence electrons. Hydrogen atoms are similarly linked to benzene atoms. The rediscovery of ring-faced models continues even now. For example, Pavel Osmira, Czech Republic, and oh, there we go. There's me, Bob Grenier. That's how it translates it. And probably others that I simply don't know about. Kushlev, AU, and maybe someone else who have models of leptons, but as you understand, I can't cover them all in one article. Hey! I got a mention! Yay! So, okay, so this is Pavel Asmira's model from Brno in the Czech Republic. This is the structure of hydrogen atom, 2 ring structures. And I know from recognizing Pavel Asmira's work that this is the electron and this is the proton, and they are held together by attractive and repulsive forces. Okay? And here is the structure of a helium atom, which is not too dissimilar from that which we saw above. And here is another Pavel's model of the electron based on Pavel Asmira's work. And oh, there we go. That's an image from one of my presentations, O-Day light and leptons. Okay, so there's our fractal toroidal structure making a clustered structure. Okay, there we go. Okay. So there we go. That was a bit of fun, wasn't it? So lots of different ring models of atoms and so on. And he's got some volcanic eruption here with the lightning, which is all very exciting from the charge separation going on. That's quite cool. And what else do we have? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, he's got the M drive there, of course. That would be interesting to see what his comments are on the M drive for the propulsion system there. Interesting. He's got the 1864 or whatever it is model of the ether from Maxwell. Okay, so I'd like to read this, but it's quite long, and there's a lot said. Oh, that's even Rossi's system here. Microwave discharges, he's saying, in the Rossi's thing. So conclusion, the cause of cold nuclear transmutation is shock loads at a steep front of the volt-ampere characteristic. That is a high DI/dt discharge, I agree. Called microwave or powerful nanosecond electromagnetic pulses, I agree. Of the flow of mechanical energy. Cold nuclear fusion is self-assembly of elementary particles from ether. I pretty much buy that as well. Atoms from elementary particles, molecules from atoms. The so-called HF from the ether in metal hydrogen reactors, LENR, low energy nuclear reactions, microscopic ball lightning is born, which emit ultra-high frequency electromagnetic UHF EM waves and cause the burnout of reactor filament and strange radiation. Fuel-free electric power generators like the ECAT, Rossi and Energovia, that's the Vachayev reactor. This is a self-sustaining microwave discharge fed from the ether. To explain the principle of their operation, one can and should use the theoretical foundations developed by Kushelev AU for resonators interacting with the ether, the so-called microwave energy. Okay, and what did John Hutchison use? Microwaves. 21 to 24 centimeters. Not the 12.5 centimeters you normally get in your microwave at home, which resonates with water. Okay. So I think that's nice. So you've seen one way. Now you can actually extract a PDF like I've just done, and I'm going to show you a different method using Microsoft Word, because many of you may have Microsoft Word out there, and we can see how it does compared to what you've just seen, the free translation available from Google Translate. So we've got the same document here, and if you've got the pro version of Acrobat, you can go to Acrobat here and go File, Export PDF. That's right, I'm going to get rid of my mugshot here. Export PDF to Microsoft Word. So we're going to export this to Microsoft Word. This is showing you a separate method. And we're going to save that. We've saved it, and Word will pop up in a second. So you're going to see Word pop up. So this is our document that's been converted from the PDF. So you can see it's a fairly accurate representation of what we just seen. It's got all the images in the right place, okay? Now what you can do here is you can go to Review up here on the menu bar here, and you can go to Translate, and you can go Translate Document, okay? And it should identify Russian to English, and you can hit Translate, okay? What I'm doing is I'm showing all of you how to take this incredible work that's been done by the Russian community, who are kind of trapped. They've been trapped because of the oil and gas and nuclear power that Russia creates, but they're kind of trapped. And they're freely giving this out. The experimental design, the observations, brilliant thoughts, and so on. And here we go. This is the Word translated document, and you can see it's not bad. It's there. Is it as good as the free one from Google? I don't know, but you know, it's immediately editable. Okay. Still spelt my name wrong. They spelt the translation's worse now. It's different from the translation from Google. I'm Grigner now. That's my name. R. Grigner. Okay. Anyway, that's that. So look, I've given you several methods. So you can use Google Translate on your phone. You can use. There's another way where you can screen grab, but not like you're doing on the Mac, but you can actually screen grab and then copy that and do an image translate in Google Translate. But if you've got the document like I'm giving you here, then you are able to do full sections of that document really rather easily. Okay. In fact, just for shits and giggles, I'm going to see, wait, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to delete the original. I'm actually going to see if Google Translate will actually translate the whole document, because that would be fun, wouldn't it? Right, so we're going to go images, documents. No, just get rid of that. Browse your files. I'm going to see if I can translate the whole proceedings. This would be fun. Can't translate files of this type larger than 10 megabytes. All right, so we can't do more than 10 megabytes. So you will have to split it down, okay? Ken Pratt. Hey, Mr. Grigner. Grignon. Oh, dear. All right, so... all right, let's go back to the main event. Maybe we can use the same method in looking at other things. Now, here is a person we know and love. This is Ed Lewis, and he's talking about ball lightning characteristics. Help us understand the strange radiation particles and micro ball lightning. Okay, so this one's already in English. We don't need to translate this. So we got micro ball lightning here, and what do we see here? Oh, look, there we go. That's Matsumoto, and this is Ken Shoulders. And what have we got? This is more Ken Shoulders. I recognize these images. This is what's it? Bogdanovich. This is actually a cluster produced in plasma flow water discharge. And then he talks about normal ball lightning, and oh, this is a Ken Shoulders again, and he's referring this to a UFO cluster, similar, and blah blah blah. This is a French guy, I think, and this is an impact on Mars. Actually, this particular image is used as the profile image of Andrew Johnson, so I think that's quite nice. Okay, I think this is from memory. This is Devial, so this is a charge cluster impact from Devial. This is from. Sadly, he's parted. This is from John Dash. Yes, John Dash. Actually, my friend and colleague and former director of the MFMP, Matthew Villat, studied under John Dash. Just a bit of trivia there for you. And he calls it a fifth state of matter. And he's making the same conclusion I did, that ball lightning is very similar to the black hole at the center of our galaxy. This is a black one, and this is a white one, and there's another black one. This is all again from Bogdanovich. I think this is from Parkhomov. These are strange radiation tracks. That might be from S. Savatomova. Okay, so there we go. So thank you very much for that contribution by Ed Lewis. And in fact, to give Ed Lewis credit, for those that don't know, this chap here, Ed Lewis, was the first person to suggest to Takaaki Matsumoto that he might have created micro ball lightning. So that needs to be credited. That took Matsumoto down a different path. Hold on, who's that? Is that Solin? Hold on, what's this? No, it can't be. What was above it? Solin's not with us. Okay. It might be. Hold on, I'm going to see if there's. So there's more theory here. Here we go. We have something that is referring to Binger and Huang's work. So we can see our collapsed pipes here that I have analysed and found these magnetohydrodynamic structures, fractal structures. Oh, there we go. This is actually my image here, taken in my dear friend and colleague Alan Goldwater's lab in Santa Cruz. And, right, okay, I remember the guy sending me this, and then I said, look, I don't have time, but I will get back to you. And this is an ether vortex here, right? The problem I have here is that he's got the output coming out here, and it's actually, that's the input. I have sent him a whole document to correct this. He's correcting this this cavitation bubble, so and he's actually got the ether vortex, and he's taken my conclusion here. So I think maybe we'll translate this paper, because I think we're going to love what this guy has got to say. I think this is going to be a nice thing to translate. So even though he's got some things around the wrong way. What have we got there? Is that there? Where does this end? No, it's still going, it's still going, it's still going. Right, okay, all right, no, it's still going, still going. I've actually talked about parts of this paper before because it's so significant, some of the things that he said. Is that the end of the paper? No, not quite. Oh, it's a long paper. Okay, all right, there we go. So we're going to extract this, same method we used before, extract pages. And we're going to call this file save as, we're going to call this vortex. Vortex. And we're going to see if we can do this. What method should we use? We'll use the googly translate method, which I think we've got here. So we go browse your files. I've got this one called vortex here. Boom, ba-dum, ba-dum. It might, oh, it's okay, it's fine. It's 3 megabytes, so we can do this. Translating, you're going to see how long this takes. Dum-de-dum-de-dum, la-di-da-di-da. Okay, so open translation. Why not? Here we go. Right. What does he say? This is a theory and practice of measuring the characteristics of physical vacuum and its importance for cold transmutation of nuclei. E.M. Avsharov and E.A. Gubarev. And these are from the Fund for Assistance of Innovative Development of the State, Moscow. Okay, so this is funded by the Russian Federation. The theoretical substantiation of the existence of pure vacuum electromagnetic fields, methods of their reception and generation, as well as experimental results on measuring the characteristics of these fields are presented. In the practical plane, the problem of generating pure vacuum electromagnetic waves is solved. So these are electromagnetic phantoms, I guess, is solved by reducing the inductive resistance of the radiating element. According to the reciprocity principle for linear electrodynamic structures, the receiving element should also be free of inductance. On cavitation transmutation of nuclei in water reactions. Oh, have we got a different spelling here? Robert William Grignard? No, we've got Grignard spelt like that again. At the Russian Cold Transmutation Seminar on March the 27th, 24, someone called Robert William Grignard from the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project gave a report on his work which examined samples obtained after the destruction of water cavitation reactor. So these are the things, and I looked at them and I showed these things. This is his ether vortex model, and it's here as well. Toroidal ring structure, but all you need to do is rotate. So I'm going to get my face out of the way. You just need to rotate this round the other way and it's correct. Toroidal ring structure on the side of the outlet funnel, of which conglomerates of the new material in very significant quantities: carbon, manganese, aluminium, silicon, potassium, iron, all the same things that you were seeing in the other plasma vortex reactor, but this is cavitation, which are initially absent in the water, and the walls of the reactor were found. The inlet funnel of the toroid is immersed in copper wall, from which it flows the transmutation of the wall material. Okay. So the cavitation process in the aquatic environment is a multiple process of the origin of microscopic toroidal ring structures. These structures are characterized by the dense vortex flow, micro-tornado, which is ejected through a central channel. You can see the actual tornado here. By a dense solid body. Without limiting the generality, we will call the toroidal ring structures under consideration objects, generally implying that they are composed of elementary objects rotating along circular trajectories. A still film from Cavitation bubble. Okay, so he should credit the person, I can't remember his name. A microtornado has a huge energy density, which is why when it collides with a solid surface, it creates cavitation caverns. Without energy that the microtornado transfers into the nuclei, the latter are not able to reach a sufficient energy level to carry out transmutation reactions. Not quite agreeing with that, but anyway. The article concludes, during cavitation processes, water can trigger specific nuclear reactions and produce energy. Yes. In the paper, the mechanism of interaction of toroidal ring structures with nuclei is attributed to purely vacuum electromagnetic fields, which act as transmutation agents. This conclusion is made on the basis of specific non-classical properties of these fields. Properties of super penetration through electromagnetic screens, the ability to extract energy from the surrounding superdimensional structure, I agree with that, electromagnetic energy, and transport it to the nuclei, I agree with that, as well as the method of the generation which occurs during circular rotation, charge or electrically neutral particle or Poynting vector, vector of the electromagnetic energy flux. Boom, I agree with that. Technical description of the pure vacuum electromagnetic fields. On classical electrodynamics and attempts to revisit it, the principle of real relativity. In this main work on special relativity, Einstein showed that the equations of classical electrodynamics retain their form, i.e. are invariant under transformations of coordinates and fields between inertial reference systems. The revisionists of classical electrodynamics have always had a noble goal: to find equations of the new electrodynamics and references therein that would describe both classical and anomalous experimental data. There are many of the latter at the present time, from Faraday's unipolar induction from 1830 to the superpenetrating fields of the physical vacuum. But only some. Constantin Mail of the mentioned, Constantin Mail is an expert in scalar electrodynamics. Of the mentioned revisionists managed to reach the only correct conclusion. The new equations of electrodynamics must correspond to a new, broader principle of relativity. A new principle of real relativity was put forward by one of these authors, E.A. Gubarev, and I have to say, this guy is really respected, Gubarev and Avsharov both. And based on this article, Shishkin and Karols, the remaining of the Shishkin, Karols and Dubovik team, engineered their thoughts about how magnetotor-electrical radiation does the business. So we're honing in on the route as a collective effort, and it's just a real pleasure to be a part of this journey. It corresponds to transformations of event coordinates between real and associated with real body reference systems, which are only non-inertial. You see, it's pretty good translation, this, from Google. I have to give them credit. Equations of electrodynamics of an oriented point in four-dimensional form. The equations of a new electrodynamics must be invariant with respect to transformations of real relativity and must also obey the correspondent principle, that is, they must pass into the equations of classical electrodynamics in the classical limit, which is understood as an approximation of the proper frame of reference, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So they've got some equations, Ricci rotation, and so these equations have not translated well. Sorry about that. You have to go and look at the original. What does the original show these as? Yeah, they look like equations. These don't look like equations. They look like equations. So I have to say, it doesn't do a good job with those. All right? Where E and H are the vectors of electric and magnetic fields. I'm not sure it's done a very good job here, is it? Is that the right equation? We're missing some. Oh no, here. This is okay, so they're the equations, okay, that we're looking at here. Oh, it's not so bad. It's not a disaster. Okay, it's completely unreadable. It's a disaster. Okay. This is where translation isn't so easy. Okay. Oh, and this is sometimes what... No, I'm looking at the wrong document now. Okay. In empty space, in the absence of classical sources, in the right-hand sides of equations, there will be retain only induction sources and vacuum sources. So this is due to the global nature of Ricci rotation coefficients and non-inertial systems and global nature of the induction source. It exists everywhere. There is a time variability of the emitted field. Okay, so he's really getting down into the meat and the bones. Quasi-static vacuum electromagnetic fields. Effects associated with the vacuum sources become dominant in the quasi-static case, significantly exceeds the circular frequency of the EM wave. In the case of the radio range, the rotation of the source must have a microscopic origin or in molecular, atomic, or nuclear systems. And secondly, in the purely static case, for the given cases, the observer, blah, 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 blah. Okay, which means a superluminal signal transmission speed. Okay. So we get superluminal transmissions out of this thing, and we've got this is a theoretical consequence of the confirmed by experimental discovery of Kozyrev. This guy's a freaking legend. Blah blah blah. This means that a vacuum quasi-state field can exhibit a phantom effect. There is no source, but the field is there. This means that a vacuum quasi-static field can exhibit a phantom effect. There is no source, but the field is there. Experimental confirmation of this effect is contained, for example, in 13. We note another important property of the quasi-static field, the property of superpenetration in conducting material that are opaque to classical electromagnetic fields. Indeed, the electromotive force calculated in the closed loop in a plane perpendicular to the direction of the wave propagation is identically equal to 0 in a quasi-static case. So is he explaining superpenetration? Like... This means that the electric field does not work on free charges. Electromagnetic energy does not transform into thermal energy of the medium, and there is no wave scattering. This property is also confirmed in experimental works. Right, so I think basically you're going to have to cross-reference, and probably I'll do this. This paper really is very, very interesting. Really very, very interesting. So I'm going to try and do some cross-references to see and come back to you because this paper changed the mind along with our work and observations, particularly in the paper published with Binja and Huang. It changed the minds of Shishkin, and Shishkin is like a doyen. He's like one of the most senior people, highly respected, worked all his life in the top end of understanding these kind of fields with Dubovik, the discoverer of the toroidal moment. So this paper, I think, is going to be an absolute killer when you refer to all these sources and see what he's actually referring to. But from what I can read here, he's essentially explaining that the experimental observation of these clusters moving through metal is explained by the structure of the electromagnetic phantoms and how they do not transform into thermal energy in the medium, and there's no wave scattering, so they can actually propagate through otherwise impenetrable medium for an electromagnetic wave. Measurements of pure vacuum fields. In practical terms, the problem of generating purely vacuum electromagnetic waves is solved by reducing the inductive resistance of the emitting element. According to the reciprocity principle for linear electrodynamic structures, the receiving element should also be free of inductance. Therefore, the receiving element antenna in the vacuum electromagnetic field meter is a bifilar coil. That's going to get a lot of people excited. On each elementary section of the bifilar coil, all unbalanced fronts from all vacuum objects passing from different directions through each other are integrated, the property of superpermeability. The unbalanced fronts, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so he's actually developed a detector here, and this may be very important to detect these fractal electrodynamic structures. So he's literally got a bifilar coil here, and he's wired this up somehow to what appears to be some sort of voltmeter. I think he actually quotes the device. So he's got, in this case, the dependence on voltage on time is removed from a low capacity capacitor, 1 nanofarad or less, connected to the outputs of the Avraменko plug. Okay, I need to write to this author and find out how to build one of these detectors. This could be extremely important to all of our work. Yes, I did say bifilar, and I said that would get a lot of people excited. And oh, clearly you're one of them. There's the bifilar coil that you can see, which is part of this detector. And if this is a detector that's useful for detecting pure vacuum fields, that's electromagnetic phantoms or vacuum currents, depending on where you use the term of Schwerblis, or you use and Nebesky, or use the term of Freiberger. If this is able to detect this, this will be very useful to find out where some of our devices are actually doing the job of creating these structures. Shows a bifilar coil degenerated into a twisted double wire, which confirms that even such a degenerated bifilar coil, connected only at one end to the Avraменko fork, is a meter with a high directional sensitivity diagram, according to the effective area of the receiving bifilar part from different directions. The meter shown in Fig 4 has a drawback resulting from the fact that the bifilar coil in it is degenerate and therefore is not able to record all type of vacuum objects. Okay. Such a simple meter is a demonstration of the possible measuring of the characteristics of vacuum objects of the surrounding all-pervading vacuum environment located in the space of the receiving bifilar coil and the detection system of the... Okay, so I want to do a perfect translation of this paper. Shishkin thought it was incredibly important. Oh my God, okay, so they've got a different detector. This is Avsharov's meter on a bifilar Cooper coil. Okay, so I guess he's got a coil going up and then he's got a coil coming down, maybe. All right, okay, so I think we need to get one of these devices sorted out because we're going to be doing a lot of Vega experiments in the coming year. Okay, this is very important. For full-fledged measurements, it is necessary to use volumetric bifilar coil, which reveals fronts well, especially steep ones, characteristic of all penetrating vacuum objects. The photo Fig 5 shows a meter with a galvanic isolation and autonomous power supply presented in the mode of measuring oscillations of vacuum objects located in the area of the detector head. Okay, so I guess this is the detector head. This is the power supply. And they've got a cable coming off here, which probably comes into the meter here. Okay. Conclusion. This paper presents a experimental fact that indicate the determining of the role of toroidal ring structures in the process of nuclear transmutation in cavitation reactors. Boom! So this is going to be useful for detecting maybe the activity and which systems are working best in Binge-Wenhang's reactors. This could be absolutely groundbreaking. Absolutely groundbreaking. The mentioned structures are generators of purely vacuum electromagnetic fields. Yes, I agree. Which is the agent of nuclear transmutation. I agree, because it creates this topological monopole and the magic happens in there through the Aharonov-Bohm effect. This is frickin' legendary. This is probably one of the most important papers I've read in the last year. From the standpoint of electrodynamics of the oriented point, it's going to make me tear up. This is how sad I am. From the standpoint of electrodynamics of oriented point, the main properties of purely vacuum electromagnetic fields, superpenetration through atomic shells of nuclei. Oh my God, superpenetration through atomic shells of nuclei. So basically, these pure electromagnetic fields, from understanding extended relativistic Einsteinian equations, allow for total penetration through atomic shells, like basically they're not there, of nuclei, and the ability to extract energy from superspace and transfer it to the nuclei. This is capturing 0-point energy. This is capturing 0-point energy. It's able to penetrate right through into the nuclei and transfer energy to it. This is freaking ridiculously important, this paper. I need to understand the maths. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go there. I'm going to have to understand the maths. We're going to have to make these detectors. They could be incredibly important. Incredibly important in our Vega experiments. I'll describe which are sufficient to maintain transmutation reactions. The properties of pure vacuum fields described by the electrodynamics of an oriented point formed the basis for the justification of the first hardware method for measuring the characteristics of these fields, which is carried out by the Asherov meter. Okay. Oh my God, my name is spelled correctly. Finally, one of these authors has spelled my name correctly. Okay. Okay, so he's then got a separate paper here, Aetherodynamic Vortex Mechanism of Toroidal Cavitation Transmutation. So this is actually the paper that is cited by Shishkin in the paper that he wrote in January. Gradient aetherodynamics presents an integrated approach to understanding one of the main types of movement of the etheric medium, the toroidal ring formation, which manifests itself on all scales from the femto world of the universe, with the spin jet, which is not taken into account by outside researchers as an integrate. This is totally important, this spin jet. And this is what we have observed in experiment. And this is what finally convinced Shishkin and Karol's to take on board aspects of this theory, which is not taken into account by outside researchers, an integral part of such an etheric formation, but which determines the behavior of many processes of the material world in the etheric medium. The author applied an engineering approach, re-engineering, to the reconstruction of supercomplex systems based on their behavior, i.e. the creation of a model of etheric objects based on results of interaction of these objects with the surrounding etheric material environment. The mathematical apparatus for such reconstructed model does not exist and still requires its creation. The model of toroidal ring ether flow with spin jet allowed us to answer many questions, including the question of the mechanism of transformation of nuclei of atoms of chemical elements during cavitation. I completely agree. This is a real thing. This is a real thing. Yes, they need to get the mass sorted, and I will do whatever I can to help them. And so, okay, so this is their model, which is basically a single Tor ether vortex. This is the spin jet that comes out. This is all real. He's not considering the fractal aspect here, but he's looking at this real paper here that was studied on the field of a proton. And based on this, a mainstream paper based on the field of a proton, the proton itself is an ether vortex of this form. That is what it is. So they have this model here, and they show that everything up to the formation of a galaxy, to a proton, and to a cavitation bubble, they're all the same. I couldn't agree more. And here he has a tornado. Of course, there you go, tornado in Russian. Okay, tornado top, tornado whatever, bottom, or shaft rather. Okay, this is just freaking awesome. Over the period of 2017 to 2022, the author proposed two main basic models of ether movement that can arise from the interaction of etheric flows in space and time. Longitudinal etheric wave, longitudinal ether shock wave. Longitudinal shock ether waves, LSEW, occur in processes such as collision of comets and asteroids with planets, collision of stars and supernova explosions, nuclear explosions described in the work of X-ray radiation and as a longitudinal shock ether wave. Well, that would explain if it travels faster than the speed of light and you have a nuclear explosion, then you are going to get a longitudinal shock ether wave, and that would bring the aliens to us to say, look, what the hell's going on? Right, so this is, I love this experiment. These are collimated rays that were observed in cavitation caused by a high-speed water jet. This is a very, very important experiment by Vygotsky and Kornilova and Sosev, which I've considered a number of times in the past. Form primary cavitation using ultrasonic shock waves with the help of plano-convex top and plano-concave bottom metal lenses. The following were created: a strongly diverging top and a strongly converging bottom. etheric X-ray shockwave, gradient etherodynamics. Then you have a longitudinal ether shockwave. Longitudinal etheric non-shockwaves occur during electric discharge and entire volume of interaction in material media, gases, liquids, solids, as well as in plasma during radio emission. Electromagnetic radiation of the radio range as a longitudinal non-shock etheric. Okay, so he's got a bunch of papers there you can look at. He's actually got a very big site, and I think this needs to have a lot of serious attention played on it. This is sponsored by the Russian Federation, this work. So, you know, then they're taking what we've done extremely seriously, and the output of this work has, like, as I keep saying, has changed the nuances in Shishkin's work. There is an imbalance in the integral of the gradient and the variable ether pressure at each point of the ether space surrounding the antenna. So he's describing how the antenna works. Okay, all right, fine. He's got some other antenna here, the principles of radiation control. So he's describing how this antenna works. Ether pressure gradient meters, that's what they're calling it. Longitudinal etheric waves as well as vortex etheric formations are recorded by variable ether pressure gradient meters. So basically this device, accordingly, he's saying, can detect both forms of vortex and other etheric waves. We've got to be building these. We've got to be building these. Okay. All right. Toroidal ring etheric formation with spin jet, characterized by pumping through the central zone of the toroidal ring etheric flow as well as material media that will be drawn in by the input etheric funnel, accelerated, twisted, and thrown out through the output etheric funnel beyond the etheric body of the torus. There are two options for implementing the etheric toroidal ring movement with the spin jet. A single etheric toroid of rotation. An example is a tornado, which is based on an etheric vortex. Well, there you go. They're just flat out saying it. Shown conditionally. So what you're looking at here is the Russian Federation at the very highest level are considering this as the way it works now. This is the cutting edge, right? Figure 4, spinning an atmospheric vortex. See figure 5 here. In this case, the etheric and air vortex is strongly pressed to the surface of the Earth and deformed. Okay, so they are showing how an etherodynamic toroid with spin jet in the free ether is a schematic designation. Okay, so there we go. These showing how it's lined up. Etherodynamic drive of a tornado in the atmosphere, dual etheric toroid of rotation. The suction sides of the dual etheric toroid of rotation are directed towards each other. Okay, so he's got a back-to-back etheric vortex here, where they're both spinning in the same direction, but you have a down this way and an up that way. And they're saying that this is the same as quasars. Etheric double toroidal vortex of stellar or galactic type, including quasars, on the right is a diagram of the toroid. Okay, so I think that's what he was showing up here. So here, possibly this is the quasar with the beams coming out either side. Okay, again, this is on every scale. This has been very evident for all my research into this field. Okay. An example of a double etheric toroid of rotation is discovered as etheric galactic vortex with two jets or crowns located inside a stellar disk of our Milky Way galaxy. The etherodynamic drive of the Milky Way galaxy as shown in figure 7 and 8. Okay. Okay, so there he is. He's saying that this is the same thing. And I would agree. Etherodynamic double toroidal ring vortex with jets of the Milky Way galaxy. Rotation curves of stars, the above described work, blah, blah, blah. The characteristics of ethereal environment near the Earth are fundamentally different from standard model. The toroidal ring organization of the movement of the etheric medium with emissions in the form of spin jets is the main type of stable etheric dynamic object on all scales, from the proton to galaxies. I would agree, except I don't hear the fractality here. You need the fractality to produce the stability, and you need the fractality to produce the spin that you see within the structures and that is resultant from them, which is due to the maximum high speed of pumping ether through the central region with a minimum cross-section and consequently the drop in etheric pressure in the central region. Oh God, there we go. He's literally right saying there that there is a change in the structure of the physical vacuum in the center of these objects. And that goes from the proton to galaxies, from the proton to galaxies. At every single state of these structures, all of nature is based on this, and the magic goes for the drop of etheric pressure. So when I'm saying that matter is destroyed on the input cone because there is a depressurization of the vacuum in that space, in the disruption zone that Paul Kletnov observed, that we have observed in multiple different types of experiments, and that he is arguing here is the basis. I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. It's the basis of the Hutchison effect, why the magic is occurring in that. You're changing the space-time in a region of space, different from the ordinary vacuum that sustains ordinary vacuum objects. In the central region can reach 10 orders of magnitude. Wow. So they've done the maths on this. Wow. He's saying 10 to the power 10 change in the etheric pressure. 10. Oh my God. The drop in etheric pressure in the central region can reach 10 orders of magnitude or more, in relation to magnitude of etheric pressure in the environment outside the etheric toroid. Oh my God. You have your normal space-time outside, but in that vortex that's pulling that copper slug in, it's depressurized the vacuum by a power of 10 or more. The matter literally just falls apart. It literally falls apart because it hasn't got all that vacuum energy pushing against it, keeping it stable, breathing that vacuum energy, keeping it stable. It just falls apart. I've been saying this since 2017, since they started this work. Interesting that. Oh my God. Wow. And the model that I showed you earlier that he shows is from a mainstream science understanding of the vacuum pressure of a proton. And the proton is, in my view, a fractal electrodynamic structure made of etheric vorticey particles. And so does Pavel Lasmira. We are complete agreement of that. We are complete agreement of that. Andras Kovacs and the Italian chap who wrote a book on this, they're moving in that direction. They're moving in that direction, and they've done all the maths. They're getting there. This is mind-blowing to me. I don't know how he's calculated this. I need to understand how he's calculated this, but he's categorically saying here that it is a depressurization of the vacuum. It is a depressurization of the vacuum, exactly as I've been calling it since when I saw that tungsten rod with the Amarza gas on it, and when I saw the same thing with other samples that we did with Amarza gas, I worked through 2 entire nights studying those things. I did 160 hours in 10 days on the SEM, and I only basically slept 8 and whilst I was sleeping, Alan Goldwater got up and changed the filament, the tungsten filament in his SEM. When I basically burned out a filament, and that's when I went to sleep. And I remember walking around Alan's studio and I said, this is going to melt people's brain. When they understand that what I'm going to be showing them is showing physically a depressurization of space-time, a change in the physical vacuum, is going to melt their brains. If you're listening to this now, Alan, remember when I said that. And I was in ontological shock, because I was seeing something that could only be explained by this. Some magnetohydrodynamic structure had a cone, and out of that cone, in several systems, it was producing a depressurization in the vacuum so that matter just fell apart. Just fell apart. And here it is. Here we are in 2025, and someone has done the maths in Russia. And it works from the scale of a proton all the way up to galaxies. Winston Bostic, spot on the money. He wasn't mad. Project Sherwood, funded by the US Department of Energy and its 3 major labs, national labs, saying that this explains everything from subatomic particles all the way through galaxies, formation of galaxies. You were right, Winston Bostic. And it's the same process in nature. What have we got here? Graphs of etheric pressure and etheric pressure gradient and acceleration in the area of the Earth's surface inside and outside it. Well, I'll have to translate this and look at this. This paper deserves a lot of work on it to make sure it's translated faithfully. A significant drop in etheric pressure in the center of the torsion ring etheric vortex is the source of gravity. Yes, it's the source of gravity. It is. It says it, but I've been arguing it. It is. You know, if you want to make a tractor beam, you have several of these smaller structures providing your ether vortex flux to keep your so-called anti-gravity, but it's just propulsion, craft aloft. And then in the center, you know what you have? You have another one. And it does exactly what a tornado does when you see those 36-wheeler or whatever it is, metal containers, lifting up very, very slowly, moving slightly over and then gently being put down, because they are being caught in the tractor beam of a tornado, which is working in exactly the same way. You don't want to disrupt the matter. You just want to create enough of the ether flux so that all of the atoms in that thing are lifted up. And that, my friends, is unequivocally, as far as I'm concerned, a tractor beam. And a tractor beam is, in my view, 100% doable. A significant drop in etheric pressure in the center of the torsion ring etheric vortex is the source of gravity of astronomical objects, starting only with some satellites of planets, with accelerated movement of ether to the center of gravity. The main mechanism of energy stability of the toroidal ring vortex etheric formation generates an attached etheric vortex which has dimensions more than an order magnitude larger, and an energy that is as many times smaller. For example, galactic etheric vortex primary with the external diameter of 5 kiloparsecs, inside which the laws of gravity operate, has an attached galactic etheric vortex with a diameter of 150 kiloparsecs, which is 2.5 times larger than the diameter of the visible part of the MP galaxy, with a diameter of 60 kiloparsecs and 30 times larger than the diameter of the primary galactic etheric vortex. So I guess this is the primary, this is the secondary, and this is the tertiary. Etheric galactic vortex, fractal vortex in the zone between the boundary of gravity and the boundary of the galaxy. Ether is sucked towards the center of the galaxy. Yep, I can buy that. This is an utter joy. I think we might have to stop on this paper today, and we're going to have to take a serious look at this. The diameter of the trunk of the galactic etheric vortex, 0.4 kiloparsecs, which is more than 12.5 times smaller, more than that magnitude, blah, 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 blah. Attached galactic etheric vortex. We will not consider the intergalactic etheric vortex due to the insufficiency of, and incorrectness of data and observations. The etheric vortex of the proton has an attached etheric vortex 5 orders of magnitude larger than the size of the proton, i.e. it has the size of a hydrogen atom, which in the standard model is taken as the orbital of the electron. I couldn't agree with this more. If a real etheric object of the electron type arises, then only in a physical vacuum, for example in an X-ray tube. The author has serious evidence for this. External etheric pressure compresses and spins the ring and toroidal flows of the etheric toroid, the neutron, turning it into a proton, which is extremely resistant to external influences. It is maximally pumped up with energy of the ether moving in it. Yes, the spin jet is the true, real spin of elementary particles and atoms as etheric vortex formations, starting with the proton, the properties of which determine all the properties of nuclear magnetic resonance processes and in chemical reactions, in which everything is determined determined by the spin architecture of molecules. This is bang on the money. It's absolutely bang on the money. It's a joy to be reading this. It's not a perfect translation, but I'm really enjoying this. In all material objects that have a stable etheric toroidal ring organization, from the proton to the galaxy, including ethereal vortices of the tornado type and atmospheric cyclones, ethereal drives of the planets and stars, there will be more detailed discussion of ethereal cavitation formations later. Ethereal flows of the spin jet represent predominantly high-speed longitudinal movement of the ethereal masses in the direction of the center of the vortex, in one direction or in both directions with a double ethereal toroid. Simultaneously, with the rotation of the entire ethereal mass as a solid body, the speed of the ring of the rotation in the spin jet is proportional to the distance to the axis of rotation. Coming out of the body of the toroid ring etheric vortex, the longitudinal velocity in the spin jet decreases somewhat with the expansion of its diameter. The spin jet extends over significant distances. For example, the spin jet of some galaxies is of the order or of magnitude or more larger than the size of the galaxy itself, or for example, beyond the proton limit. Otherwise, the NMR process of hydrogen atoms could not be realized in the NMR tomographs. Okay, so I can't. So there's your spin being formed in the center in our gyro core, coming out and in. Okay, so I think this is the proton and this is the neutron. So then this has a spin around it for the proton, and this is the neutron, which doesn't. Protons being bombarded with electrons at Stanford Linear Accelerator by D. Burkitt and co. The pressure distribution inside the proton. So this is it. What I was showing you earlier is the pressure distribution. Let's go and have a look at this paper. Can we go and get it? Is it going to give me it? Oh, what's happened now? Ah, no. Oh, it's got rid of my paper. Let me see if I can view that again. Open translation. Okay, so here we go. So this is a mainstream paper that was done at Stanford Linear Accelerator. Okay, so this is the same place where Freiberger worked. And this is it. So it is the pressure distribution inside the proton. So there we go. Okay, so I think how he's calculated that 10 to the 10 or more is he's considering that the boundary of the proton is out here, and we have a certain pressure here, and we have another. Okay. Okay, so we have at this point on the pressure here, this is 15, 16, 17, and in the center, or this area here, we have -8. So maybe this is the 10 orders of magnitude or more that he's discussing about the depressurization on the input funnel. And so when you, this is a vacuum object, my friends. It's a proton. It's a normal, ordinary vacuum object that lives in our vacuum. Here, this is the proton. So it's this vortex, simplified version. Vortex, this is the spin jet that comes out, which is responsible for spin. And here, based on Stanford linear accelerator's work, we have a depressurization of up to 10 to the power 10 in the zone around here, which is this conical tornado that comes in to the center of etheric matter. Okay, this is the feeder, and according to Shishkin, this is where etheric matter comes in. The atom is able to get energy from it to keep the orbital electrons in spin and in balance with the etheric pressure from outside. This is literally everything. So the Casimir force, where you're getting your energy from, the relationship between the normal ordinary vacuum. And so if you make an exotic vacuum object, you're making a fractal version of what you see here at a larger scale, which has a cone that would come out of it with a disruption cone that would extend further, has a gravitational azimuth through the center, as described, and it depressurizes the vacuum. So ordinary matter that's trying to exist in this depressurization zone is pulled apart. This is totally on the money. This aligns with all of my statements and my thinking for the best part of, well, since 2017. This is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's based on mainstream physics analysis of just the proton structure. The correspondence between Stanford linear accelerator experiment and the toroidal ring with spin jet representation of the distribution of ether pressure along the section along a proton axis in accordance with the concepts of gradient aerodynamics. Okay, so he's mapped it out here. Oh, and does that look a little bit like an apple? I mean, does it look like a bit like an apple? It looks like a bit like an apple to me. It looks like an oblate sphere. Remember that term, oblate sphere. I'm talking about oblate sphere. Read my lips. Oblate sphere. We'll come along to that at some point in the future. Changing the ether pressure along the proton axis. Representation of the distribution of ether pressure along a section of perpendicular to the proton axis in accordance with concepts of gradient aerodynamics. And so he's got one half here, that's the spin jet coming out, and I would like to translate that, and we will do. In fact, I actually have translated all of these slides. I just don't think I got around to publish them, actually. Change in ether pressure perpendicular to the axis through the center of the proton. Okay. Oh, right, so he's actually put the graph on here. Oh, wow. Okay, so what is the scale? So this is the central axis. This is a highly negative pressure in the center here. And then this is the positive pressure going out to the boundary of the ether vortex, which is the size of the hydrogen atom. Electric currents in a conductor is a flow of ether with rotation as a solid body. Okay, well, this will please a lot of people. Electric current in a conductor is a flow of ether with rotation as a solid body. Let's read that again. Electric current in a conductor is a flow of ether with rotation as a solid body. Yes, J.K. Phillyvan, the Earth is an oblate sphere, but I'm not referring to that. Etheric current in a conductor is a flow of ether with rotation as a solid body. So he goes into how current moves along a wire as a etheric flow. So we can all look at that when we choose to. This needs to be translated to understand it better. Aerodynamic representation of flow of ether in a conductor as an electric current. Okay, there we go. Good, good. Cavitation process, aerodynamic measurements, and nuclear transmutation. Aerodynamic measurements during cavitation. The author has investigated all-pervading etheric radiations on the IWEC cavitation water installation. All right, so they've got their own cavitation device here, or someone they've got access to, measuring the values of ether pressure gradients. Okay, I'm saying we need to get one of these devices to test with Binzhen Huang, and he's already doing it with cavitation devices. Asherov's aerodynamic meter with galvanic isolation at various points of the device when it is working and non-working condition, as well as the room where it is located. Oh my God, I've just realized you may be able to use this detector as a feedback system so that you control input parameters so that we know when, say, a clad off or a Huang reactor is actually optimized, and we can use it to tune the low energy nuclear reactions. Oh my God, this is next level. Installation at a distance of more than 3 meters from operating elements of the installation heated up to 40 degrees C. The measurements of values of the ether pressure gradients were measured at 19 points on the device, which were made by the meter and the above mentioned points perpendicular to the surface at a distance of 45 millimeters from the surface. The ether dynamic meter IGED 2GR is shown below. This is the one we're all looking at. During operation, induced vortex oscillations of the etheric environment occur. Oh my God, this will be brilliant for looking at the etheric vortices that should be generated by the thunderstorm generator, Thor. And also from, I've said before, the Vega experiments. In fact, basically all of the experiments, all of the above, all of them, all of them, all of them. Wow. Exceeding the background state of the etheric environment 2 to 4 times with tendencies. What? Hold on. Induced vortex oscillations exceeding the background state of etheric environment by 2 to 4 times with a tendency to increase the excess over the background with a long period of operation of the installation. So the longer you operate the installation, the more the etheric vortex increases over the background. It should be noted that the measurements on the radiator, which was not connected to the installation for more than 2 days during operation of the installation, was 110 millivolts, an increase of up to plus 50%, and indicates phantom etheric vortices inside the radiators. Oh my God. Oh my God. This could comport with the fact that the water coming out of structured water systems and the water particularly coming out of Binzhen Huang's cavitation system is special. If the water itself is holding etheric vortices, it could be cohering extra energy from the environment and be extremely special for life. We have to get one of these detectors. Have to. We have to measure the water and map how long it maintains those etheric vortices. The cavitation process is an aquatic environment based on the concepts of aerodynamics, is a multiple process of the generation of microscopic toroidal ring vortex formations with the intense release through the central channel of the cavitation bubble. A swirling etheric and water flow spin jet in terms of aerodynamics, possessing enormous energy, which when colliding with a solid surface creates cavitation caverns. Well, we've seen it so that it actually creates a hemisphere and it has these 2 galactic type whip ends coming off it. the exotic vacuum object that can be created in cavitation, resonant cavitation systems can create its own boundary, which is so intense that it destroys ordinary matter. We've shared the evidence for this many, many moons ago, in fact, several years back. This is revealed that the measurement of radiation from radiators not connected to the installation on the day of the measurements and several days earlier exceeded the room background of 70 millivolts by 1.5 times, which is due to the activity of the surrounding etheric environment. Small fluctuations in the surrounding etheric environment support etheric phantom and cavitation processes inside the installation due to all-pervasive ability of the etheric environment. In rooms located at a considerable distance from the subject, the fluctuations in the etheric environment were 55 millivolts. The etheric dynamic drive of water cavitation bubble is the leading one in the symbiosis of the etheric toroidal ring with spin jet and the water vortex of the cavitation bubble, which is the consequence and the cause occurrence is the collision of water flows created by the generator cavitation processes in the ether and water environment. In this case, mechanical sound shock waves arise, generating both water and first of all etheric vortices, which are compressed, spinning up to a maximum energy density in a minimum volume with the release of a spin jet in the direction of their movement. And this is correct, they are in the direct. Spin jet is definitely in the direction of their movement. We've seen that in Vega experiments as well as cavitation. Etheric vortex mechanism, toroidal cavitation, transmutation. At the Klimov Zatelepin seminar on cold transmutation from March 27, 2024, researcher Robert William Grenier provided a link. Thank you very much. You spelled my name right. That's twice. Provided a link to the research on samples obtained after the destruction of a third-party cavitation installations, which have direct evidence of the presence of toroidal structures formed when the etherodynamic drive captures the cavitation bubble of a material medium. In this case, the wall of pipe made of copper. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Look at my mugshot there. Oh dear. Below are some images taken from the films linked above. Grenier, oh, he's got the name wrong there. It's all right, it's fine, whatever. Presents toroidal structures on the surface of copper pipe obtained by capturing the cavitation bubble of the copper pipe wall material by an etheric vortex obtained using electron microscope. The process of nuclear transmutation has been documented in the cavitation and other processes leading to cavitation, including biological ones occurring in the cellular double membranes in mitochondria. In the transmutation of oxygen from water into carbon using photosynthesis, the name is fundamentally incorrect. Photosynthesis is not the release of carbon from CO2. It is not synthesis, but the transmutation downwards from oxygen into carbon. That's a bold claim there. That's a very bold claim. The material was just missing for a complete and reliable description of etherodynamic processes of dissembling and assembling atoms of matter as they pass through the center of the etheric toroidal ring. Okay, so I have to coordinate with him because we have the full explanation in flux capacitor. There is enough data in that presentation to explain the full process. So he definitely misinterpreted some things. But anyway, this material was just missing for a complete and reliable description of the etherodynamic processes of disassembling and assembling atoms of matter as they pass through the center of the etheric toroidal ring formation. Okay, so his problem is that he is not considering the fractal structure, and it's the fractal structure that leads to the core, which doesn't necessarily pass everything through. If you get the right fractal structure, it keeps stuff in the center and allows for the transmutation. And then when the overall etherodynamic structure collapses, the vacuum currents collapse, then the matter is reborn. So I need to walk him through the physical data that's showing that. When you're looking at a single toroidal vortex, etheric dynamic vortex like a tornado or a basic vacuum structure that is in a normal cavitation bubble,
then yes, you do get the jet just going straight through as the overall etheric vortex collapses. But in the fractal electrodynamic structure, you get the stuff stuck in the middle, and it piles up and it piles up, and then it gets reborn in the process of electronuclear collapse. Thank you, Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto. So I need to clarify that simple structures do not have always the spin vortex. There is coherent matter that comes out in the spin vortex. That does exist, but a lot of the matter itself is kept in the core. All right. So the spin jet as evidence base for the correctness of the model, toroidal ring organization of etheric motion within the distribution of the etheric pressure according to the graphs. What do we see in figure 18? On the right is a fragment at the surface of the copper pipe into which etheric vortex and cavitation bubble crashed with its lateral surface. The axis of rotation, which is located at the angle to the surface. And the suction funnel of the vortex is partially immersed in the wall of the material. He's got that exactly reversed, but because it works in the way it does, he's not wrong, he's just interpreted it wrong. The material of the copper wall is involved in the rotation cycle, so the toroidal structure is revealed, fragmented into small fractions. So he thinks this is coming out, is actually going in, and this is burrowed itself into the surface. So I need to help him correct that. I have sent him that, but again, I've showed him. He's actually got it. I've showed the vortex coming in here, but because I don't have the spin vortex demonstrated on that, and that's my bad, because I've explained it, but he's reading it the wrong way round. He needs to rotate this round 180 degrees, and he's got it right then. So he's got the right idea, but he's just got it round the wrong way. It's the same discussion point. It's rotated 100 degrees. Blah 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 blah. Due to the incomplete filling of the toroid, the directions of the etheric flows are visible on the outlet funnel, which, when released into the aquatic environment, throw out the material that has undergone transformation. He's pretty correct, but it's only when it dies. Having passed through the central region, apparently when the insulation was destroyed, the transformation material itself was torn off. The spin jet successfully recorded, which has a different composition of chemical elements from the pipe wall, and the angle of inclination of the toroid is greater. The spin jet is powerful, its size exceeds the size of the toroid. He is right about that. The principal spin, but this is not the spin jet coming out, it's the spin jet going in. The spin jet that comes out the top, in my view, when the structure is functional, is purely coherent matter and or a helical gravitational wave. That is what comes out of the top of the structures, which is the spin jet. You can get coherent matter coming out, and that comes out as the coherent matter traveling waves, but they also come out of the fractal substructures at an angle, which we've showed. So he's very, very close. He's very, very close. But his contribution on identifying the pressure gradient in the proton and similar structures in galaxies and every place in between, with a slight correction, I think we'll basically have a model of how the universe works. Toroidal reactor on sacred geometry proposed by Grenier. Okay, so yes, and it is based on. I'm very happy that he put the sacred geometry in there. Obviously, I didn't see that before, but that's exactly what it is. The author does not fully agree with Grenier, that's fine, in terms of the explanation of the mechanism of transmutation in strong connection with sacred geometry. Oh God, he said he doesn't agree at sacred geometry here. All right, fine, whatever. But in general, we have similar approaches and the main conclusions about what the reason for the appearance of the line of atoms in the process of cavitation, which were not previously present in the original material. The slight discrepancy in the results of the studies is due to the fact that we, as engineers, approach the understanding of transmutation processes from different angles. The author from the side of aerodynamics and Grenier from the side of sacred geometry. No, you're not wrong. You're not right. I say it is always a pressure change in the vacuum. It is aerodynamics, so he's not aware of my work that talks about it from the aerodynamics. I don't call it aerodynamics, I call it a vacuum in the ether or a depressurization of the vacuum energy state. So we are talking the same thing. I'm just saying that the structure that does it is sacred geometry. This is going to be a great combination, a conversation with him when I can have it. Here is an interpretation of the toroidal construction of the cavitation process of transmutation proposed by Grenier from the position of sacred geometry based on the author's opinion on proportions related to the stability of real geometric objects, which works perfectly well within the microworld. The discovery of conglomerates of materials that could not have been in the initial state of the cavitation installation and those discovered by Grenier. Okay, so, all right. So he's saying the ejector comes out here. And yes, in this case, it's again not right. You need to rotate this 180 degrees because the pressure builds up and it's in this enclosed space and it gets spat out. But that is the vortex that comes out, but it's a counter vortex. So he's fixated, I think, on the proton as a macro singular vortex and as the cavitation bubble and tornado, but he's not seeing the fractality that goes on. And I don't think it's because he's looked at other parts of the presentation where he's not seeing these things as things that are inside. So I need to kind of like finish that. I don't know what he's putting here, but maybe I should translate that to find out what he's actually calling that structure. Okay, camera. Okay, he does in fact call this a small toroid here, so he's correct. He's calling this a small toroid. He doesn't realize that there's two of those inside the structure, but that's okay. That's okay. He's so right about so much else that, and he's done the maths and he's found this other work by the Stanford Linear Accelerator. This is a really incredible value contribution here. Hi Kim, you're still awake. I'm nearly done here. I'm loving this paper on Ethereum vortices, and he's bang on the money. Emission of carbon by cavitation, toroid, and conglomerates with composition indicated in the table. So we got this combination here: carbon, oxygen, magnesium, aluminium, silicon, potassium, iron, and of course copper. So we obviously had oxygen, there was hydrogen in the mix, but we're getting massive amounts of carbon, magnesium, aluminium, silicon, potassium, and iron, which weren't in the mix. On the right is another cavitation toroid frozen with the captured copper wall material with a significant release of carbon. Since the toroid's inlet funnel was almost entirely in the aqueous medium, the toroid's axis has an inclination to the surface from right to left. The presence of conglomerates is confirmed by the table of chemical elements shown in the right. Small toroids shown in figure 20 and 21 have smaller dimensions and therefore lower energy. No, sorry. No, the smaller toroids have a higher energy. Okay, all right. The depressurization of the smaller toroids. So, okay, I need to correct him with that, and that will be helpful to show the 2021 paper of the femtosecond laser or attosecond laser, whatever it was, into a nonlinear plasma. So I've got to help him correct his understanding here, both of the data itself and the stability of the substructures, because after the big substructures die, the smaller substructures survive, and that's why they punch through the smaller substructures. He's seeing these as independent smaller vortices. He's seeing these as independent smaller vortices when these structures are actually the structures that come from the inside of this, and it probably came out of this hole here. But no, they're different ones. But anyway, this is a substructure of this. So it's okay. It's okay. Like, he hasn't spent so long with the data, I guess. The cavitation bubble does not occur. The synthesis of new chemical elements becomes impossible next to small toroids. New formations are clearly not observed. Okay, he's missing the fact that these toroids were part of this big structure, and that is probably where he's losing the reference to the fractality and the sacred geometry. But that's okay. That's okay. It's such a valuable contribution here. Etherodynamic mechanism of nuclear transmutation during the cavitation process. The description of the results given above from the standpoint of gradient etherodynamics, which is a continuation of the development of etherodynamics by Atlitskovsky, allows us to understand the mechanism of transmutation of nuclei of chemical elements in the aqueous medium of the cavitation installation. To create the process of transmutation of input components down by atomic numbers, it is necessary to significantly weaken the compressive external pressure of the ether. This is your 0 point. This is your vacuum fluctuations. And this is exactly what I said. God, when was it now? In 2019, when I was pacing around Magic Sound Labs, thank you, Alan Goldwater, and I said it's depressurizing the vacuum, the ether. Wow. He doesn't know how much I agree with him on that. He just needs to understand that he doesn't need to be scared about it being this sacred geometry thing, because that's what it is, and it breaks up in that way. And so, yeah. Environment on primary atoms, which keeps the atoms from decaying. Yes, that's it. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying atoms do not decay because they have this pressure from the outside, which is the vacuum energy, right? But when you remove that pressure by having an exotic vacuum object nearby, the atoms literally fall apart. They literally fall apart. It is necessary to significantly weaken the compressive external pressure of the ether environment on primary atoms, which keeps the atoms from decaying. Apparently, there is some threshold of ether pressure below which atoms fall into an unstable state. This is how your radioactive material becomes unradioactive when it gets cavitated or it gets plasmoids on it. Just falls apart. Just falls apart. And can be broken into different fragments. This is the first part of the transmutation process, creating the necessary conditions for its occurrence. So you make matter fall apart. It disassembles atoms, and then it goes into the core. Now, where I disagree, it's not just going straight through as the newly synthesized atoms. It goes through and gets trapped in the core. And if you bake it and you bake it and you bake it and you bake it and you keep it energized on those resonant nodes and you keep it energized on the resonant nodes, you can get heavier and heavier and ever. And we know this is the case because Kladov did it. We know it's the case because Sviatomenko did it. We know it's the case because Leclerc did it. Many authors of the theoretical God, I need some sleep now. Etherodynamics accept that the charge of protons and electrons does not exist, but there is an interaction of the etheric vortex flows of the latter in the etheric medium, obeying the laws for continuous media, and therefore there is no Coulomb barrier. Boom! Bada boom! There is no Coulomb barrier. You basically have a bubble proton. You have another bubble proton. And it has such an intense etheric vortex that it pushes the the ether, away from it. And when they get close to each other, those two vacuum currents can't go into each other. They push away. So how do you fix that? You depressurize them and then you suck them into something and they get stuck there and they turn into more etheric energy in the core and then they get reborn as new atoms. In cavitation installations, regardless of the type of cavitation generator, researchers of the cavitation process themselves, such as Crum, that's where that actually cavitation thing comes from, Van Dyke, is that Dick Van Dyke? Oh no, sorry, it's M. Van Dyke, oh well. Dick Van Dyke's old enough to have discovered everything, but M. Van Dyke, blah blah blah, Prokhorov, blah blah blah, okay. Everywhere one can see toroidal ring organization of cavitation bubbles with the release of screw structure in an aqueous medium. The toroidal water structure, visible in light range, is only secondary. The primary structure is the etheric vortex of the same configuration, which spins the water toroid, possessing many times greater energy and all-pervading properties, proven by many observations. The energy of the cavitation bubble is the energy of the etheric vortex that created it. I agree. I actually agree with that. For example, a tornado is an ethereal vortex of different scale in the air environment, the passage of which through a material object changes its physical and chemical properties. Boom! Could not agree more. This is why you see those weird stuff going on in tornadoes. Due to the previously described mechanism of strong decrease in the etheric pressure, I agree entirely. In the center of the etheric toroid, I agree. The trunk of the tornado there is a movement of the etheric medium which captured bodies of the material medium as a solid body. This is in a large degree why the thunderstorm generator is doing what it's doing, which we can observe. Okay? The second part of the transmutation mechanism is the ejection of accelerated solid state formation, the outlet funnel of the toroid with high energy, during which it collides. It just isn't. Sorry. We have hollow spheres and they almost always have a hole at one end. And out of that hole at one end, doesn't matter whether you're looking at our work, you're looking at Sveti Adamenko's, you're looking at Ken Shoulders, you're looking at Matsumoto, the stuff comes out of that hollow inside. Just spews out in a counter tornado. That's what it does. That's what it does. Right? Yes, there is a spin jet that goes through. It is a gravity wave and or a coherent matter beam. Yes, yes. But the bulk of the material comes out when the fractal electrodynamic structure fails and the material is reborn. We've nearly done it, guys. We've nearly done it. This is creation. This is transmutation. It's decreation. It's anti-gravity. It's faster than light communication. It's faster than light traveling. It's teleportation. Yeah, we're going to get to that. It's unlimited energy at any point in the universe. It's the God's toolbox with a little g in quotes. Oh, here we go. I haven't even read the next paragraph. The surrounding water and solid medium. A transition to the area of the medium with normal etheric pressure occurs. A monstrous compression and synthesis of various atoms occurs. He's right. He's just not quite right about where it comes out. But he's right. He's right. That's what happens when this etheric matter comes out. It gets compressed into ordinary atoms. All of that 10 to the power 122 or 144 of the vacuum energy is compressing that matter into ordinary matter. That's right, compressing those etheric vortices into ordinary etheric structures. A transition to the area of medium with normal etheric pressure occurs. A monstrous compression and synthesis, I love this phrase, a monstrous compression and synthesis of various atoms occurs, which are maximally stable in this process. Maximally stable, that is not unstable. Thus, it was possible to describe the process of desynthesis and synthesis, transmutations, of the atoms of the environment as it is seen from the engineering point of view of the positions of gradient aerodynamics. A consistent design of the etheric vortex is presented as the driving force of the creation of the world material environment, which is born in the centers of toroidal ring etheric toroids, with the ejection of newborn spin jets into the surrounding space of the etheric material environment. Close, not quite there, but close. The confirmation is the birth of new stars and diffuse matter in the galactic jets discovered by the academician of USSR Academy of Science Victor A. Ambertsman in the emissions of the radio galaxy M87, who put forward the revolutionary idea of hierarchical division of prestellar hadron in the 50s of the last century. According to the author's evidence, protons are born in the centers of gravity created by a toroidal ring etheric vortex. Yes, I agree. Aerodynamic drive of planets, stars, galaxies in an etheric environment with a gigantic reduced etheric pressure, which are ejected into the external material environment by the spin jets of the corresponding etheric vortices. References are listed on page 4. Similar processes of transmutation occur in biological cells of plants during the so-called photosynthesis, which is in fact the process of desynthesis of the nucleus of an oxygen atom, O2, taken from the water molecule into nucleus of carbon atom by taking away the nucleus of an atom. Proven in experiments on growing plants in inert gases feeding only water, although however infrared radiation of a certain wavelength is required. Very, very interesting. Study of the absorption of carbon dioxide from the air by plants. Okay, this is interesting. Which completely refutes the official theory of photosynthesis. Similar processes occur in biological cells of the animal world. For example, the transmutation of potassium into calcium. We know this one, which is necessary for birds, necessary for the creation of eggshells, but absent in the diet, which is replaced by potassium. Okay, we know that. It is necessary to reveal and describe how and where transmutation mechanisms occur and how the etheric vortex toroidal works. Blah, blah, blah. Epilogue. Gradient Etherodynamics presents an integrated approach to understanding one of the main types of motion of the etheric medium, the toroidal ring formation, manifests on all scales from the nano world and the universe to the spin jet. Okay. All right. Well, conclusion. Etheric vortex mechanism, toroidal cavitation transmutation is a generalization of the idea of toroidal ring formation of ether with spin jets. This universal form of movement and dynamic flows in which the birth of the proton in gravitational ether flow described earlier occurs, the creation of chemical elements in the spin jets of toroidal etheric vortex formations, for example, during cavitation, as well as during the birth of stars and jets of galaxies, blah, 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 blah. Key findings, which I think we can summarize. Okay, all right. All right. I think that's probably enough for me tonight. I think you can see the importance of this set of presentation papers. I regret not having the time to fully explain the data from flux capacitor to this author. And it's okay that he didn't understand that, you know, I have had the same theory about depressurization of matter. I've said it thousands and thousands of times in my presentations, but he's not a native English speaker. He wrote to me and said, I can't speak English and blah, blah, blah. So that's okay. I can point him to where I say like the bubbles behind the bubble structure in the 2017 video, the sprites video, is a depressurization in this zone. And that's depressurizing the matter and it falls apart, right? I've said that so many times. But what he's done with capturing that Stanford linear accelerator work is just awesome. And the connection, and all he needs to do is to understand that yes, in the simple structures you do get the spin jet coming through and maybe you'll get some transmuted elements coming through, but actually what happens, the matter aggregates in that core. It aggregates and it aggregates and it aggregates, and only when it dies, the electrodynamic structure dies, the various fractal structures will come out, and in water we have only seen wheel within wheel within wheel. We've only seen wheel within wheel within wheel. But in the electrodynamic sense, we've seen in Hutchison sample at least wheel within wheel within wheel within wheel. And this is the one that's discussed by Zverblis in 1995 rather, from classified work from the Soviet energetics program from the prior to the end of the Cold War. So I can now understand why Shishkin got so excited when he saw this interpretation. I also need to help Shishkin understand the project's work, my work with the project and with Bingjin Huang. So that's clearly understood. And I think I would like to work with this guy and Alexander Shishkin and put this to rest. Essentially, I'd like to put it to rest. I think we've done it. I think we've done it. It's creation, guys. Decreation on every level. The divine creator, from Alpha repeatedly to Omega, comprehends and works with
whirlwinds. The divine creator, repeatedly from alpha to omega, comprehends and works with whirlwinds. That's it. You can access the 0 point. You can depressurize the vacuum. You can make matter fall apart. You can create tractor beams. You can create gravity waves. You can create coherent matter waves. You can disassemble and assemble matter. You can convert atoms into other atoms. You can, faster than light. If the medium that's in front of you is able to be pulled behind you and then forced into something that drives the process that moves you forward, that propulsion system will go faster the faster it can go. It can go faster the faster it goes, because it gets more food to feed itself. Exotic vacuum objects are like ordinary vacuum objects. They are built in the same way. But they have a voracious appetite for ordinary vacuum objects and for the medium in which they live and sustain themselves. By changing that medium, potentially by, according to this paper and according to the Slack study, up to and in excess of 10 to the power 10, you go through a threshold point where, one, matter starts to act a bit weird. Then it starts to fall apart. And then it disassembles and it gets fed into a core in which it can gather and gather and gather. And when the system breaks down, new matter is born by this monstrous recompression into condensed matter. It is a beautiful thing. I've said it before, from the point of view of ancient history. But I think genuinely, my friends, we are at the new dawn of an old age. And with that, I will say thank you very much. I don't know if I've got any donos to say thank you to. I was not paying attention, so thank you again to Mark Dummy. That's very kind of you for that $30. This has been a real pleasure to share this with you tonight. I did not expect this to go the way it's gone tonight. This is a real pleasure for me. I need to work with these authors. Now I understand why Shishkin keeps sending me his papers first. Yeah. What an honor. This was a brief look at some of the papers in the proceedings of the 28th Russian Conference on Cold Nuclear Transmutation of Chemical Elements and Ball Lightning. My name is Bob Greenyer. Thank you very much for your time. Buenas noches. Dobranoc. Good night.